Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto became the new Jubie, the Ten Tails Reborn. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Convergence of Fates. The sky above Konoha fractured like broken glass. Crimson fissures stretching across the once peaceful blue expanse. Naruto Uzumaki stood atop the Hokage monument, his white cloak billowing violently in winds that shouldn't exist in this reality. At 32, the seventh Hokage's face had hardened into sharper angles, though his eyes still held that stubborn flame that had defined him since childhood. Shikamaru, get the last civilians to the underground shelters, Naruto commanded, not turning to look at his advisor. The dimensional barriers are collapsing faster than we anticipated. Already handled, Shikamaru replied, his voice tight with the strain of maintaining his characteristic calm. Sasuke's message just arrived. Whatever that thing is, it's broken through the outer seals. He can't hold it back alone much longer. Naruto closed his eyes, extending his awareness through the natural energy surrounding them. Miles beyond Konoha's borders, he could feel Sasuke's chakra, brilliant and fierce, but flickering dangerously like a candle in a storm. Beyond that, something vast and ancient pulsed with hunger. Not chakra as they understood it, but something adjacent, a void that consumed rather than created. She calls herself Izanagi, Naruto said quietly. Kagaya's sister from a parallel dimension. And she's not just after our world. Shikamaru's sharp intake of breath was nearly lost in the howling wind. You made contact. Quote, not intentionally. Naruto's fingers unconsciously traced the spiral seal on his stomach, where 9 distinct chakra signatures hummed in anxious harmony. The tailed beast sensed her first. She's harvesting chakra across multiple realities, consuming entire dimensions. Ours is next. The sky cracked further, a sound like mountains splitting echoing across the village. Villagers who hadn't yet reached the shelters looked up in terror as reality itself seemed to tear. The elders have agreed to the forbidden scroll, Shikamaru said, producing an ANC. Iron parchment sealed with symbols so old they predated the hidden villages. Tsunade translated the final passages. It's as we feared, the ritual has never been successfully completed. Naruto finally turned, his blue eyes reflecting the fractured sky. Because no one's ever had all 9 tailed beasts willing to participate. No one's ever been friends with them. Naruto. Shikamaru's voice faltered, the genius strategist momentarily lost for words. The scroll doesn't just say it's never succeeded. It says all previous attempts resulted in the subject being consumed from within. Even with the beasts, cooperation. Your consciousness could be obliterated. A half-smile lifted the corner of Naruto's mouth. When have the odds ever stopped me, Shikamaru? Before his advisor could respond, a massive tremor shook the monument. In the distance, near the village border, a column of darkness pierced the sky, a void so absolute it seemed to devour light itself. Sasuke, Naruto whispered. His hand formed a familiar seal, and 3 shadow clones appeared beside him. Begin the evacuation of the eastern district, he ordered one. To another. Reinforce the barrier team. The third IVED a more personal command. Find Hinata and Boruto. Tell them. The clone nodded gravely, understanding the unspoken message, and vanished in a blur of speed. I need to reach Sasuke, Naruto said. The golden glow of 6 paths sage mode already enveloping him. Prepare the ritual chamber. We've got less than 3 hours before that thing breaks through completely. And if this doesn't work? Shikamaru asked, always the pragmatist even in the face of apocalypse. Naruto's expression hardened, his whisker marks deepening as Kurama's chakra flared in response to his emotions. Then get as many people as possible through the emergency dimensional portals. Kakashi and Orochimaru have the coordinates for the refuge dimensions. Without waiting for a response, Naruto leapt from the monument. Golden chakra flaring around him like solar flares as he accelerated toward the darkness consuming the horizon. Sasuke Uchiha had witnessed cosmic horrors during his dimensional travels. But nothing had prepared him for Izanagi. Where Kagaya had possessed a physical form, alien and powerful but comprehensible, her sister existed as a consciousness spread across a churning mass of darkness. Tendrils of void lashed against his ultimate defense, Susanoo cracking under the assault. Each impact sent shockwaves of pain through his body, the psychic connection between himself and the chakra construct transferring the damage directly to his soul. "About time you showed up," he managed through gritted teeth as golden light announced his oldest friend's arrival. Naruto hovered beside the massive purple warrior, assessing the situation with eyes that shifted between blue and slitted red. "Holding back an interdimensional entity by yourself again. You never change, Sasuke." "Neither do you," Sasuke retorted, a thin stream of blood trickling from his eye. Still charging in without a plan. Naruto's expression grew serious. "We have a plan, just not one you're going to like." Before Sasuke could respond, a tendril of darkness slipped through a crack in Susanoo's armor, wrapping around his leg. Instant, searing cold penetrated to the bone, not physical cold, but the absence of energy itself. Naruto moved without hesitation, golden chakra arms extending to sever the connection. Where his energy touched the darkness, it hissed and recoiled like water on a hot skillet. "She's afraid of you," Sasuke observed, his analytical mind never ceasing even as he fought through the pain. "No, not you. What's inside you?" "The tailed beasts," Naruto confirmed. "They're fragmi, NTS of the original 10 tails from our dimension. Izanagi wants to consume them, but she's wary. They're the only entities that might resist her absorption." The void entity pulsed, expanding outward in all directions. The tree line around them disintegrated, not burning or breaking but simply ceasing to exist, matter converted to pure chakra and drawn into the darkness. "We need to fall back to the village," Naruto said, his voice tight with urgency. "I can't complete the ritual here." Sasuke's visible eye widened. "The Jubie vessel transformation. That's suicide, Naruto. Even for you." "No. Tea with the modifications Orochimaru and I made to the ritual," Naruto replied, creating dozens of shadow clones that spread out in a perimeter, each glowing with different variations of elemental chakra. "I'm not going to be a mindless vessel like Obito or Madara tried to create. This is something new." The clones simultaneously slammed their hands into the ground, creating a massive barrier seal that momentarily pushed back the darkness. In that brief respite, Sasuke dispelled his failing Susanoo, collapsing to one knee as chakra exhaustion hit him like a physical blow. "I can still fight," he insisted as Naruto moved to support him. "I know," Naruto smiled, that same stubborn, confident smile that had irritated and inspired Sasuke in equal measure since they were children. "That's why you're going to be the failsafe." Understanding dawned in Sasuke's expression. "If you lose control, if the 10 tails consumes your consciousness, then you do what you've always promised," Naruto said simply. "You stop me." The barrier around them flared as Izanagi renewed her assault, cracks spreading through the golden light. The shadow clones began to dispel one by one, each loss weakening the shield. "We need to move now," Naruto said, placing a hand on Sasuke's shoulder. In a flash of golden light, they vanished, reappearing instantly in the center of Konoha, where an elaborate ceiling array had been carved into the stone of an underground chamber. Tsunade stood at the center, her face grim as she made final adjustments to the ancient symbols. Around the perimeter, a dozen Anbu maintained a secondary barrier, while Orochimaru inspected a series of instruments monitoring chakra fluctuations. "The dimensional rifts are accelerating," the Snake Sanin announced without preamble. "We have perhaps 40 minutes before total collapse. Then we'd better not waste time," Naruto replied, already removing his Hokage cloak and shirt, revealing the complex seal on his stomach where the 9-tailed beasts resided. Sasuke moved to join Orochimaru at the monitoring station, his face impassive despite his obvious exhaustion. "What are our chances?" Orochimaru's serpentine eyes flickered briefly to Naruto, who was now lying in the center of the array as Tsunade painted additional seals across his body. "Conventionally, 0. The human body isn't designed to channel the power of the 10 tails, let alone control it. Previous attempts focused on suppressing the beast's consciousness entirely. But," Sasuke prompted, knowing there was more. A thin smile crossed the Sanin's pale face. "But our Hokage has never been conventional. He's not suppressing the beasts, he's synchronizing with them. The technique draws on elements of the Sage of Six Paths, original division of the 10 tails, but in reverse." Before Sasuke could question further, the chamber doors burst open. Hinata Uzumaki stood in the entrance, her Byakugan active and her face set with determination. Behind her, Boruto's expression mirrored his mother's resolve. "You weren't going to say goodbye," Hinata said, not a question but a statement as she approached her husband. Naruto's face softened with regret. "I thought it would be easier." "For who?" she asked, kneeling beside him and taking his hand. Her voice remained steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes. "Never for us." Tsunade tactfully paused in her preparations, stepping back to give the family a moment of privacy as the room's other occupants averted their eyes. "Dad," Boruto said, his teenage bravado failing as he struggled to find words. "This is really bad, isn't it?" Naruto looked at his son, no longer hiding the gravity of the situation. "It's not just our world at stake, Boruto. Izanagi is consuming entire dimensions. Countless lives across realities we can barely comprehend. So you're sacrificing yourself," Boruto concluded, anger and grief warring in his expression. "Again. Always. Boruto," Hinata said softly. But Naruto shook his head. "He's right to be angry," the Hokage said. "I've always put the world first. It's who I am." He reached out, placing his free hand on his son's shoulder. "But this isn't just sacrifice. It's transformation. I don't know exactly what I'll become, but I promise you this, I'll still be me. I'll find my way back to you both, no matter what." The chamber trembled, dust falling from the ceiling as a distant roar announced Izanagi's approach. The Anbu barrier flickered momentarily, their masked faces turning toward the disturbance. "We're out of time," Tsunade announced, returning to complete the ceiling array. Hinata leaned forward, pressing her forehead against Naruto's. "I believe in you," she whispered fiercely. "We all do." Boruto gripped his father's arm, words failing him but his eyes communicating everything: fear, pride, love, anger, all tangled together in a look that Naruto understood perfectly. "Sasuke," Naruto called as his family reluctantly moved back from the array. "If this works the way we've planned, I won't be able to stay in this dimension. The chakra concentration would destabilize reality itself." The Uchiha nodded once, understanding the unspoken request. "I'll watch over them." Tsunade completed the final seal, stepping back as the array began to glow with blue-white light. "It's ready. Naruto, you need to synchronize with all 9 beasts simultaneously while I activate the outer containment." Naruto closed his eyes, centering himself as he'd done countless times over the decades of partnership with Kurama and the others. But this was different. Not drawing on their power, but merging with their very essence. "We're with you, Naruto," Kurama's growling voice echoed in his mind, joined by 8 other distinct voices, each conveying their consent. The chamber's light dimmed as Izanagi's presence blocked out the sun above. Reality shuddered, the very air seeming to thin as dimensional boundaries weakened. "Now," Tsunade commanded, slamming her palms into 2 master seals. The array ignited with blinding light. Naruto's back arched in agony as 9 distinct chakra signatures inside him began to shift, merge, and transform. His skin cracked, golden light pouring from the fissures as the very nature of his being rewrote itself at a fundamental level. Across the room, instruments exploded as they failed to measure the impossible energy being generated. Orochimaru's eyes widened in scientific fascination despite the danger, while the Anbu strained to maintain their barrier against the backlash. "Something's wrong," Tsunade shouted over the roaring energy. "The dimensional fragments, they're being drawn in too." Sasuke's Rinnegan activated as he perceived what others couldn't: fractures. In reality itself appearing within the chamber, tiny shards of other dimensions being pulled toward Naruto's transforming body like metal to a magnet. "It's not just our 10 tails," he realized aloud. "He's drawing in fragments of every 10 tails from every dimension Izanagi has already consumed." The chamber ceiling disintegrated as a tendril of pure darkness punched through, sensing the concentration of power. It drove directly toward Naruto's convulsing form, hungry for the energy being generated. Hinata moved without hesitation, twin lion fists blazing as she intercepted the tendril. "You will not have him," she declared, her Byakugan showing her exactly where to strike the seemingly insubstantial darkness. Boruto joined his mother, Rasengan forming in his palm as he attacked from another angle. Sasuke's Susanoo manifested once more, despite his exhaustion, a skeletal ribcage providing additional protection around the ceiling array. Within the array, Naruto was no longer visible, his form obscured by a swirling vortex of energy that contained all 5 elemental natures plus something else, a primordial force that predated the elements themselves. Naruto, a voice thundered, not coming from any specific direction but resonating within the minds of everyone present. You would challenge a god. From within the vortex, Naruto's voice responded, strangely double, as if multiple entities spoke in perfect synchronization. I've challenged gods before, Izanagi. They usually underestimate me too. The darkness recoiled momentarily, then surged forward with renewed fury, overwhelming the combined defenses. Hinata was thrown back, Boruto barely catching her before she hit the wall. Sasuke's Susanoo cracked, the Uchiha dropping to his knees as blood poured from both eyes. The vortex surrounding Naruto pulsed once, twice, then exploded outward in a silent shockwave that froze time itself for 3 heartbeats. When reality resumed, Naruto stood at the center of the shattered array. But it wasn't the Naruto they knew. His body glowed with inner light that shifted between golden yellow and deepest purple. 10 spectral tails waved behind him, each seemingly composed of different elemental energy. His eyes had transformed completely, concentric rings of silver-purple surrounded by a starburst pattern that combined the Sharingan's tomo with symbols no one recognized. When he spoke, his voice resonated with power that made the air vibrate. Izanagi, you've consumed your last world. The darkness recoiled, tendrils withdrawing as if burned. Impossible. The vessel ritual always fails. The human mind cannot contain the 10 tails. You're right, Naruto replied, raising a hand that now bore markings resembling the Sage of 6 Paths, symbols. But I'm not containing it. I've become it, the 10 tails reborn, with a human heart and mind. He stepped forward, reality rippling around his feet. With each step, the stone beneath him transformed, not cracking, but evolving. Crystalline structures sprouting in his wake. No, the 10 tails is mindless power. Primal hunger. You cannot have tamed it. Naruto smiled, an expression both familiar and alien on his transformed face. I didn't tame it, I became friends with it. With all of them. That's always been my greatest strength, something you could never understand. He raised both hands, and the dimensional rifts throughout the chamber began to close, reality knitting itself together under his will. The darkness shrieked in frustration, lashing out with dozens of tendrils. Naruto didn't dodge. He stood perfectly still as the attacks converged, and passed through him as if he were a mirage, disturbing nothing. I exist in all dimensions simultaneously now, he explained, his voice calm despite the impossible power thrumming through his words. You can't touch me, Izanagi. But I can touch you. He extended one hand, and golden purple energy coalesced into a sphere unlike any Rasengan his friends had ever seen. Within it, miniature galaxies seemed to form and dissolve, entire cosmologies living and dying in seconds. This ends now, Naruto declared, and stepped forward. Not moving through space but somehow folding reality around himself, disappearing from the chamber and reappearing instantly at the heart of the darkness outside. The resulting collision between like entities shook Konoha to its foundations. Buildings cracked, streets buckled, and the sky itself seemed to shatter into prismatic shards of light. For a moment, everyone in the village witnessed impossible geometries as dimensions overlapped, glimpsing worlds that operated under entirely different physical laws. Then, silence. The darkness vanished, leaving only clear blue sky above Konoha. Sky unmarred by dimensional fractures or cosmic anomalies. In the chamber, the observers held their breath, waiting. A full minute passed before reality rippled once more, and Naruto reappeared. He looked simultaneously exhausted and energized, his transformed appearance flickering occasionally to reveal his more familiar form beneath, as if he existed in multiple states simultaneously. She's gone, he said simply. Banished beyond the dimensional boundaries. The worlds she consumed are being restored, but his expression turned troubled as he looked down at his hands, where energy continued to swirl beneath his skin. Something's wrong. I can feel it. Tsunade approached cautiously, her medical expertise driving her to assess despite her uncertainty about his transformed state. What are you feeling, Naruto? Too much power, he replied, wincing as a pulse of energy radiated outward from him, cracking the stone beneath his feet. The ritual worked. My consciousness is intact, merged with the 10 tails rather than consumed by it. But there's too much, everything. The fragments from other dimensions, they're still being drawn to me. As if to illustrate his point, tiny fractures in reality appeared around him, glimmering like heat mirages. Through them, glimpses of other worlds flashed briefly, mountains that floated upside down, oceans of liquid light, forests where every leaf was an eye. Dimensional instability, Orochimaru observed, fascination overriding caution as he approached with one of his surviving instruments. You're becoming a dimensional nexus point. Reality itself is trying to reorient around your existence. Naruto nodded grimly. I can feel it, and it's getting worse. He looked up at the people around him, his family, his closest friend, his mentors, with profound sadness. I can't stay here. My presence will tear this reality apart. There must be a way to stabilize it, Tsunade insisted, already examining the remnants of the ceiling array for clues. Perhaps if we modified the containment parameters. No, Naruto interrupted gently. I can see the chakra flows now, in ways I never could before. This isn't something that can be sealed or contained. It's the natural consequence of what I've become. Hinata stepped forward, her Byakugan active as she studied the swirling chakra patterns within and around her husband. He's right, she confirmed, her voice tight with restrained emotion. His chakra network has expanded beyond his physical form. It's interfacing with reality itself. Boruto shook his head in denial. There has to be something we can do. We can't just lose you after everything. Naruto moved to his son, careful to maintain a small distance as reality fluctuated around him. You're not losing me, Boruto. I'll find a way to stabilize enough for visits, communications. I promise. But I need to establish a sanctuary in the dimensional boundaries, a place where I can exist without damaging the worlds around me. Sasuke spoke for the first time since Naruto's transformation, his analytical mind already working through implications. The Otsutsuki Dimensional Palace, the ruins Kagaya used, could those structures withstand your presence? Naruto's transformed eyes widened slightly. Yes, they were designed to exist between dimensions. With modifications, I could adapt them. Another pulse of energy radiated from him. Stronger this time. Nearby equipment shattered, and the walls of the chamber groaned as space-time warped momentarily. I need to go, Naruto said urgently. Now, before I cause real damage. Naruto-kun, Hinata said, stepping closer despite the visible distortion around him. Let me come with you. He shook his head, pain evident in his expression. I don't know at this power will do to normal humans with prolonged exposure. Until I understand it better, until I can control it completely. He trailed off, then straightened his shoulders with familiar determination. I'll find a way back to you. All of you. That's my promise. Hinata stood her ground. Then take this, she said, removing a small crystal pendant from around her neck, a wedding gift she had always worn. So you remember what you're working toward. Naruto hesitated, then carefully accepted the pendant, which glowed briefly as it adapted to his transformed energy. I could never forget, he said softly. The chamber shuddered again, more violently this time. Naruto, Sasuke warned, the dimensional stability is reaching critical levels. With visible reluctance, Naruto stepped back from his family. Sasuke, I need a favor. The Uchiha raised an eyebrow questioningly. Your Rinnegan can track me between dimensions, Naruto explained. Once I've established a stable location, I'll send a signal. Bring Kakashi and the others there. We'll need to coordinate how to handle the aftermath of Izanagi's attack across realities. Sasuke nodded once, understanding the unspoken message. Naruto was ensuring a connection would remain, that he wouldn't be completely isolated in his dimensional exile. Dad, Boruto said, his voice breaking. Naruto smiled. A genuine, familiar smile despite his transformed appearance. I know. Me too, Boruto. Take care of your mother and sister. I'm counting on you. With that, he raised his hands, and reality folded around him. For a brief moment, everyone present saw infinite versions of Naruto overlapping, existing in countless dimensions simultaneously. Then he was gone, leaving only a faint aroma of sage energy and a perfect circle. Of transmuted stone where he had stood. Silence filled the chamber, heavy with loss and uncertainty. After several moments, Tsunade broke it pragmatically. We need to assess the village damage and establish communication with the other hidden villages. Azanagi's attack affected the entire world. As the others began to move with purpose, following the Sanin's lead, Hinata remained staring at the spot where her husband had vanished. Boruto stayed beside her, his face set in a determined expression that mirrored his father's. He'll find a way back, the young man said firmly. He always does. Hinata nodded, her Byakugan still active, watching the last traces of Naruto's unique chakra signature as they faded from this dimension. Yes, she agreed softly. He will. 3,000 miles away, in a remote research outpost nestled in a mountain range far from any hidden village, a young woman named Kimiko Ishida jolted upright as every instrument in her laboratory simultaneously overloaded. Slender hands flew across controls, redirecting power and adjusting parameters as screens flickered with readings that should have been impossible. At 28, Kimiko had already established herself as the preeminent chakra physicist of her generation, her brilliant mind capable of perceiving patterns others missed entirely. What in the world, she murmured, pushing wire MMED glasses up her nose as she studied a dimensional frequency monitor. The needle had shattered against the upper limit, but not before registering a pattern she'd only theorized in her most ambitious research. Multiple dimensions resonating in perfect harmony. A synchronized chakra signature existing simultaneously across realities. Her heart raced with scientific excitement as she began recalibrating her equipment. Fingers moving with practiced precision despite her evident exhaustion. Dark circles under amber eyes suggested she hadn't slept in days, her long midnight blue hair hastily IED in a messy bun that threatened to collapse at any moment. Dimensional coherence at this scale shouldn't be possible, she muttered to herself, a habit from years of working in isolation. Unless, a deafening crack interrupted her thought as reality itself seemed to split open in the center of her laboratory. Kimiko stumbled backward, knocking over a chair as the air rippled like water, forming a perfect circle of distortion. Through it stepped a figure that her scientific mind struggled to comprehend. A man, yet more than a man, wreathed in energy that shifted between colors her eyes could barely process. 10 spectral tails waved behind him, and eyes like nothing she'd ever seen surveyed the laboratory with evident surprise. This isn't the Otsutsuki dimension, he said, his voice resonating strangely. As if she were hearing it simultaneously through air and directly in her mind. Kimiko should have been terrified. Any rational person would be, confronted with an obviously superhuman entity that had just torn through the fabric of reality. Instead, scientific curiosity overrode fear as she stepped forward, analytical gaze taking in every detail of the phenomenon before her. Your phase shifting between dimensional frequencies, she observed, reaching for a scanner without taking her eyes off him. Existing in multiple realities simultaneously, but maintaining coherent mass in this one through chakra harmonization. The entity, man, looked at her with evident surprise. You understand what's happening to me? Theoretically, Kimiko replied, activating the scanner and frowning at the readings. I've been studying interdimensional chakra theory for years, but I've never seen actual evidence of cross-dimensional travel until now. She looked up, scientific. Enthusiasm overtaking social awkwardness. You're the most incredible thing I've ever seen. A flicker of amusement crossed his transformed features. Thanks, I think. The amusement faded quickly as another pulse of energy radiated from him, cracking the concrete floor beneath his feet. But I can't stay here. My presence is destabilizing this dimension too. Kimiko's mind raced, connecting the oratical principles with the evidence before her eyes. You need a dimensional anchor point, somewhere between realities where the laws of physics are malleable enough to accommodate your unique state of existence. Yes, he confirmed, looking at her with growing interest. That's exactly what I need. I was aiming for the Otsutsuki Dimensional Palace, but the coordinates seem to have shifted. Without hesitation, Kimiko turned to her primary research computer, pulling up complex calculations and dimensional mapping algorithms. The Otsutsuki Palace existed in a pocket dimension with its own physical laws, she explained. Fingers flying across the keyboard. If it's still intact, I might be able to triangulate its position using the dimensional ripples you're generating. The entity moved closer, careful to avoid sensitive equipment as energy continued to radiate from his form. You know about the Otsutsuki. Academically, she replied without looking up from her calculations. My focus is theoretical chakra physics. Specifically how chakra interacts with dimensional boundaries. After the Fourth Shinobi War, enough information became available to piece together the existence of dimensional travelers. I've been trying to prove interdimensional theory ever since. She spun away from the computer, grabbing a handheld device and approaching him with scientific boldness. May I take a direct reading? It might help calibrate the coordinates. He hesitated, then nodded. Carefully. My energy is volatile right now. Kimiko extended the device, seemingly unconcerned the potential danger as she took measurements from inches away. Her proximity allowed her to notice more human details beneath the godlike exterior, blonde hair, facial features structured with determination. And underlying his transformed appearance, distinctive whisker-like markings on his cheeks. Recognition dawned suddenly. You're the seventh Hokage, she gasped. Naruto Uzumaki. A small, almost sad smile crossed his face. I was. Now I'm. Something else. The 10 Tails Reborn. Instead of fear, Kimiko's expression filled with scientific wonder. Fascinating. A conscious Jubie vessel. That's theoretically impossible. The 10 Tails chakra should overwhelm any human consciousness. She tilted her head, studying him with unabashed curiosity. How did you maintain your identity through the transformation? Another pulse of energy interrupted them, more violent than before. Equipment shorted out around the laboratory, and a support beam groaned ominously. I promised to explain everything, Naruto said urgently. But right now, I need those coordinates before I tear this entire mountain apart accidentally. Kimiko nodded briskly, returning to her computer where calculations had completed. I have a theoretical location, she announced, but the dimensional barriers are in flux. You'll need a frequency modulator to stabilize your approach. She grabbed a small device from a nearby workbench, making rapid adjustments. This prototype was designed to measure dimensional frequencies, but reconfigured, it might help you punch through to the specific pocket dimension. Another, stronger tremor shook the laboratory as reality strained around Naruto's presence. Ceiling panels crashed down, narrowly missing them both. The entire facility is becoming unstable, Kimiko observed with remarkable calm. You need to go now. She handed him the device along with a data crystal. The coordinates are loaded. The modulator will help you breach the dimensional barrier. Naruto accepted both, looking at the brilliant young scientist with newfound respect. Thank you. I didn't expect to find someone who actually understood what was happening to me. Kimiko pushed her glasses up again, a nervous habit. It's my life's work. Theoretical, until you appeared. She hesitated, then added with uncharacteristic boldness, if you succeed in establishing a stable dimensional sanctuary. I would give anything to study it. The research implications are revolutionary. Before Naruto could respond, the laboratory's main support beam cracked with a sound like thunder. Without thinking, he moved at impossible speed, one arm wrapping around Kimiko's waist as he pulled her away from the collapsing ceiling. The contact sent unexpected energy surging through her body, not harmful, but overwhelming. Like being immersed in pure chakra. For an instant, her perception expanded exponentially. She glimpsed multiple realities simultaneously, saw energy patterns that transcended physical dimensions. Understood mathematical principles she'd only theorized. When Naruto released her, setting her safely across the room, Kimiko staggered, blinking as her perception returned to normal, though with a lingering expansion of awareness, as if neural pathways had been permanently enhanced by the brief contact. I'm sorry, Naruto apologized, noticing her disorientation. My chakra is affecting everything it touches. Kimiko steadied herself against a desk, mind racing to integrate the experience. I saw everything. The laboratory continued to deteriorate around them. Reality itself protesting Naruto's presence. With visible reluctance, he stepped back, activating the dimensional modulator. I have to go, he said as space began to distort around him. Thank you, Kimiko Ishida. You've given me hope that I might understand what I've become. She straightened, scientific determination overriding physical weakness. Wait, how will you communicate across dimensions once you've stabilized? Naruto paused in the midst of reality bending. I don't know yet, but I'll find a way. An impulsive decision formed in Kimiko's brilliant mind. Her laboratory was collapsing. Her research, already viewed as too theoretical and impractical by mainstream scientific institutions, might never be taken seriously without proof. And here before her stood the ultimate evidence of everything she'd hypothesized. Take me with you, she said suddenly. Naruto's transformed eyes widened. It's too dangerous. I don't know what prolonged exposure to my energy would do to a human. Kimiko gestured at the devastation around them. My life's work is literally collapsing. I'm the only person who understands the dimensional physics of what you're experiencing. I can help you stabilize your sanctuary. Her eyes shone with intellectual passion. And you need someone to document this. It's scientifically unprecedented. Another violent tremor emphasized her point as more equipment crashed to the floor. Naruto hesitated, clearly torn between concern for her safety and recognition of her expertise. My presence nearly killed my closest friends, he warned. The energy I'm generating isn't just chakra anymore, it's reality altering. Kimiko stepped forward determinedly. I've spent my life studying theoretical dimensional physics. No one else understands what you need. She met his gaze directly. And you know I'm right, or you wouldn't have appeared in my laboratory of all places. The dimensional currents brought you to the one person who might actually help you. Naruto studied her for a moment that seemed to stretch across multiple realities. Finally, he nodded once. Grab whatever equipment you can carry quickly. I can't maintain stability here much longer. With efficient precision, Kimiko gathered essential instruments, data crystals, and research journals, stuffing them into a reinforced backpack. As the dimensional distortion around Naruto intensified, she stepped into the radius of his energy without hesitation. This will feel disorienting, he warned as reality began to fold around them both. Kimiko straightened her glasses one final time, face set with scientific determination. I've theorized about this moment my entire career, Hokage-sama. I'm ready. The last thing she saw before reality inverted was Naruto's surprised expression at her formal address, a flicker of humanity beneath the godlike transformation. Then existence itself collapsed inward, and the laboratory vanished, leaving behind only a perfect circle of transmuted stone where they had stood. In the dimensional void between realities, Kimiko Ishida experienced consciousness beyond physical form. Her mind expanded, perceiving mathematical principles plus underlying existence itself as they traveled through layers of reality toward coordinates she had calculated. When materialization finally occurred, she collapsed to her knees, gasping as her NSES reasserted themselves in overwhelming detail. Solid ground beneath her palms. Air-filling lungs that had briefly forgotten the concept of breathing. Light and color returning to eyes that had glimpsed the void between dimensions. The first transition is always the hardest. Naruto's voice came from above her, gentler now, less resonant with cosmic power. Your consciousness is readjusting to three-dimensional existence. Kimiko raised her head, amber eyes widening as she took in their surroundings. They stood in what appeared to be the ruins of an immense palace, architecture unlike anything in human history. Massive columns of pearlescent material rose hundreds of feet overhead, supporting ceilings that seemed to reflect other dimensions. Gravity felt lighter here, sound propagated differently, and the quality of light suggested they existed in a realm with its own physical laws. The Otsutsuki Dimensional Sanctuary, she whispered in academic awe, struggling to her feet. It's real. Naruto nodded, his transformed appearance slightly less overwhelming in this environment designed to accommodate interdimensional energies. Abandoned for centuries, as far as I can tell. The fundamental architecture remains intact. Kimiko took an experimental step, noting how the floor seemed to adapt to her weight, distributing her mass differently than normal physics would dictate. The entire structure exists partially in multiple dimensions, she observed. That's how it can withstand your energy without degrading. She turned in a slow circle, scientific mind cataloging. Countless details. How light refracted at impossible angles, how sound echoed with harmonic overtones that shouldn't exist, how the very air seemed to carry information in its molecular structure. His is beyond anything I could have imagined, she breathed, excitement temporarily overriding the physical discomfort of dimensional transition. A complete pocket dimension with its own physical constants. designed specifically to interface with multiple realities simultaneously. Naruto watched her with a mixture of amusement and respect as she immediately began unpacking equipment, setting up monitoring devices with practiced efficiency despite her evident exhaustion. "You're taking this remarkably well," he observed. "Most people would be terrified." Kimiko didn't look up from calibrating a dimensional frequency scanner. "I've spent my life being called crazy for theorizing about alternate dimensions and chakra physics beyond conventional understanding." A small, satisfied smile crossed her face. Vindication outweighs terror. She finally paused, looking up at him properly. In this dimensional sanctuary, she could see his form more clearly, the human and the divine overlapping rather than merging completely. At times he appeared almost normal, then reality would shift slightly and she'd glimpse the 10-tailed entity that now shared his existence. "You need to stabilize your dimensional frequency," she said. Professional focus returning. "Right now you're oscillating between realities, which is why your appearance keeps shifting. With proper anchoring to this sanctuary, you might achieve equilibrium." Naruto moved to the center of the massive hall, where a circular platform of unknown material glowed with subtle energy. "I think this was designed for something similar. I can feel it responding to my chakra." As he stepped onto the platform, the entire sanctuary hummed in response, dormant systems activating after centuries of disuse. Lines of luminescent energy spread outward from his feet, racing along channels in the floor, walls, and ceiling until the entire structure pulsed with synchronized power. Kimiko's instruments overloaded instantly, but she hardly noticed. Transfixed by the spectacle before her, Naruto's form stabilized as the sanctuary attuned to his unique energy signature, the chaotic fluctuations between dimensions settling into a controlled resonance. When the process completed, he stood transformed but balanced, his appearance still otherworldly but no longer shifting uncontrollably between states. The 10 spectral tails remained, now flowing with more consistent energy patterns. His eyes retained their concentric rings but appeared less alien, more focused. "How do you feel?" Kimiko asked, already adjusting her equipment to accommodate the new energy levels. Naruto flexed his hands, examining them with evident wonder. "Connected to everything. I can sense all the dimensions simultaneously, but I'm not being torn between them anymore." He looked up, meeting her gaze. "You were right about this place. It's perfect." Kimiko approached the platform cautiously, scanner extended. "The sanctuary is acting as a dimensional buffer, allowing you to exist in a state of quantum superposition without destructive interference." Her scientific enthusiasm bubbled over. "This confirms my unified chakra dimension theory. Your energy signature is maintaining coherence across multiple realities simultaneously, using this structure as an anchor point." Naruto smiled at her excitement, a surprisingly human expression on his transformed face. "I'm glad my existential crisis could provide such valuable research data." She blushed slightly, suddenly aware of her scientific fervor in the face of his personal transformation. "I'm sorry. That was insensitive." "No," he countered gently. "Your understanding is helping me make sense of what I've become. That's worth everything right now." Kimiko nodded, returning to her equipment with renewed purpose. "We need to establish baseline measurements of your energy signature now that you've stabilized. Then we can begin experimenting with controlled dimensional interfaces." As she worked, Naruto moved throughout the sanctuary, exploring its vast chambers with growing familiarity. This place was designed to observe multiple dimensions simultaneously, he called from an adjacent hall. "There are viewing portals that can be attuned to specific realities." Kimiko followed his voice, finding him in a circular chamber surrounded by dormant crystalline surfaces. "Dimensional windows," she breathed, recognizing their purpose instantly. "With these, you could monitor your home dimension without physically entering it. And communicate with those I left behind," Naruto added, hope evident in his voice. For the first time since their arrival, Kimiko noticed the personal cost behind his scientific fascination. Beyond the godlike power and cosmic transformation stood a man who had left behind everything and everyone he loved to protect them from himself. "We'll make it work," she promised, setting aside her scanner to examine the ancient technology. "Between your new abilities and my research, we'll establish stable communication pathways." Naruto nodded gratefully, then frowned slightly as he noticed her appearance, the exhaustion evident in her posture, the dark circles under her eyes. The trembling in her hands as post-adrenaline crash began to set in. "You need rest," he observed. Dimensional transition takes a severe toll on human physiology the first time. Kimiko started to object, but her body betrayed her as her knees suddenly buckled. Naruto moved with impossible speed, catching her before she hit the floor. "Sorry," she murmured, embarrassed by the physical weakness. "Just need a minute." Instead of setting her down, Naruto carried her effortlessly back to the main hall. "The sanctuary is responding to my will," he explained. "I can create accommodations for you." As if to demonstrate, a portion of the floor rippled and transformed, pearlescent material reshaping into a comfortable resting area complete with bedding that seemed to hover slightly above the surface. He set her down gently, careful to minimize contact after their earlier experience when his energy had overwhelmed her senses. "Rest. We have literally all the time in the universe here. The sanctuary exists outside normal temporal flow." Kimiko's scientific curiosity fought briefly with physical exhaustion before the latter won decisively. "Just a short rest," she conceded, removing her glasses and setting them aside. "Then we need to establish dimensional monitoring protocols and begin documentation of your transformation for posterity." Naruto smiled as her eyes drifted closed mid-sentence, her brilliant mind finally surrendering to body's demands. As she fell into deep sleep, he moved to the center of the sanctuary once more, focusing his new-found awareness on the dimensional interfaces. Concentrating his will, he attuned one of the crystalline surfaces to Konoha, seeking his family. The image wavered, then stabilized, showing Hinata and Boruto in what appeared to be an emergency council meeting with the village elders and remaining Kage from other nations. He couldn't hear their words, that refinement would require more practice, but seeing them safe brought profound relief. Another adjustment showed Sasuke, already preparing for interdimensional travel, explaining something to Sakura with intense focus. They were all continuing forward, adapting to the new reality he had created through his transformation. The knowledge brought both comfort and sadness. Naruto turned his attention outward, expanding his awareness across dimensions. Now that he had stabilized, he could sense the damage Izanagi had caused more clearly, dozens of realities wounded by her consumption, thousands more threatened by the resulting instability. "I can help them," he realized aloud, understanding another aspect of his new existence. "I can heal the dimensional barriers, restore what was damaged." In the vastness of the sanctuary, his voice echoed with new purpose. He was no longer simply Naruto Uzumaki, 7th Hokage of Konoha. Nor was he merely the 10 Tails Reborn. He had become something unprecedented, a conscious guardian of dimensional integrity. A human mind wielding godlike power to protect all realities. Across the hall, Kimiko stirred slightly in her sleep, murmuring equations as her brilliant mind continued working even in dreams. Naruto smiled, grateful for the strange twist of fate that had brought him to her laboratory, the one person whose understanding might help him navigate his new existence. With renewed determination, he began the process of learning to control his transformed state completely. The 10 Tails Reborn would not be a harbinger of destruction like before, but a protector of all dimensions, guide. By the human heart that had always been Naruto Uzumaki's greatest strength. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, The Divine Wanderer. Sunrise painted the scarlet dunes blood red, its crimson sands stretching toward a horizon where 3 moons hung impossibly large in a copper-tinted sky. Wind howled through stone formations that resembled vertebrae of ancient titans, carrying whispers that those with sight of hearing claimed were the voices of the dead. Naruto stood atop the tallest dune, his 10 spectral tails flowing like liquid starlight behind him. 3 years of dimensional wandering had changed him. The initial shock of his transformation had settled into practiced mastery. His consciousness expanded beyond human comprehension while somehow retaining the core of his humanity. His Apeiron CE shifted depending on which aspects of his power he channeled, sometimes appearing almost normal save for the eerie glow behind his eyes, other times manifesting as a being of pure energy barely contained in humanoid form. Today he wore his power visibly, deliberately. The local warlords needed to witness what they faced. Below, 2 armies converged in the ancient valley, tribal warriors of the Scorpion clan attacking refugees who had sought sanctuary in these forbidden lands. The refugees, crime, harboring individuals with rare chakra mutations that the clan's spiritual leaders had declared abominations. Familiar story, different dimension, Naruto murmured, his voice carrying undertones that vibrated the sand beneath his feet. Dimensional travel had revealed patterns repeating ACR-OS realities, the strong oppressing the weak, fear of differences leading to persecution, power corrupting those who wielded it without compassion. Some things remained constant across all existences, as did his response to injustice. The armies below remained unaware of his presence, reality-bending energy masking him from conventional perception. He watched as the Scorpion warriors herded the refugees against a cliff face, men, women, and children with nowhere left to run. A commander in chitinous red armor raised his blade, signaling the final charge. Naruto closed his eyes briefly. The first year after his transformation, he had intervened in such conflicts with overwhelming force, his mere presence terrifying both oppressors and victims alike. He had learned subtlety since then, understanding that godlike power displayed without restraint often created more problems than it solved. But sometimes, a demonstration remained necessary. He extended one hand, space rippling around his fingers. Between one heartbeat and the next, he vanished from the dune and reappeared directly between the armies, touching down with deliberate weight that sent a shockwave through the crimson sand, stopping the charging warriors in their tracks. Silence fell like a physical blow. "This stops now," Naruto declared, his voice pitched to carry across the valley without shouting, multi-tona. Harmonics lending his words authority that bypassed rational thought and resonated directly with the instinctive hindbrain. The Scorpion commander recovered first, a tall figure whose face remained hidden behind an ornate mask fashioned after his clan's namesake. "This is not your affair, stranger," he called in the local dialect, a language Naruto had never studied yet understood perfectly, one of countless gifts from his transformation. "These heretics harbor demons in human form. Our laws demand their extermination." Naruto's transformed eyes fixed on the commander, irises shifting betway concentric rings and starburst patterns. "I've met actual demons," he replied conversationally. "They're usually more honest about their nature than those who persecute in the name of righteousness." The commander bristled visibly. "You dare?" "Yes," Naruto interrupted, allowing a fraction of his power to manifest visibly, golden purple energy spiraling around his form. "I dare quite a lot these days." Behind him, the refugees whispered among themselves, fear and desperate hope warring in their expressions. A child with distinctive violet eyes, one of the chakra-mutated abominations, Sta. read at Naruto with something like recognition, though they had never met. The Scorpion forces stirred uneasily, their mounts, massive six-legged reptiles bred for desert warfare, sensing the unnatural energy and pawing nervously at the sand. "This land has suffered 3 years of drought," Naruto continued, his voice softening slightly. "Your clan starves while the northern provinces hoard grain. You blame these refugees because it's easier than addressing the true problems. Easier to find scapegoats than solutions." The commander stiffened, hand tightening on his weapon. "You know nothing of our struggles, demon." "Not a demon," Naruto corrected gently. "Something else entirely." He raised one hand, palm upward. The air above it shimmered, condensing into a perfect sphere of water that expanded until it hovered above the assembled forces, a miniature lake suspended in defiance of gravity. "The underground aquifer shifted during the last dimensional convergence," Naruto explained. "It now flows half a mile east of your traditional wells." He made a subtle gesture, and the floating water divided into thousands of distinct spheres, each descending to hover before a different warrior. "I've adjusted its course back toward your settlement. Your crops will grow again within a season." Disbelief and wonder rippled through the Scorpion ranks as warriors hesitantly touched the water spheres, finding them real and not illusion. "As for these people," Naruto continued, gesturing toward the refugees, "their chakra mutations are adaptations to the changing dimensional barriers, not abominations. In 10 generations, all your children will carry similar traits. They are your future, not your enemies." The commander remained silent, conflicting emotions evident even behind his mask. Pride and tradition warred with the evidence before him and the undeniable power of the being addressing him. From the refugee group, an elderly man stepped forward, leaning heavily on a gnarled staff. The ancient scrolls spoke of one who would walk between worlds, he called in a quavering voice. The divine wanderer, neither human nor god, who bears the burden of 10 divine aspects. The time of his arrival heralds the great convergence. Murmurs spread through both groups. The prophecy was apparently known to all present, though interpreted differently by each faction. Naruto suppressed a sigh. 3 years of interdimensional travel had taught him that prophecies about his arrival existed in dozens of realities, sometimes accurate, often distorted, always complicating his effort. To help without being worshipped or feared. I'm just someone trying to fix what's broken, he said, directing his words to both armies. Nothing more, nothing less. The commander abruptly dismounted, striding forward until he stood directly before Naruto. With ceremonial slowness, he removed his scorpion mask, revealing a weathered face marked with ritual scars and eyes that held generations of pride. I am Column, war chief of the Scorpion clan, he declared formally. If you are indeed the wanderer of prophecy, then tradition demands I offer you challenge or fealty. Naruto studied him carefully, reading the complex emotions behind the ritualistic words. And which do you offer, War Chief Column? The commander held his gaze for a long moment, then slowly, with evident difficulty. For a man of his station, knelt in the crimson sand. Fealty, he declared, for the sake of my people's survival. The tension across the battlefield dissolved instantly. Scorpion warriors lowered their weapons, many following their leader's example and kneeling. The refugees, postures relaxed from terror to cautious hope. Naruto extended his hand, helping Column rise. I don't need subjects, he said quietly. These people need understanding, not persecution. Your clan needs cooperation, not enemies. Can you provide that? Pride and pragmatism battled briefly in the war chief's expression before he nodded once, sharply. For 3 generations, we have fought those with the violet eyes. Change will not come easily. But we will try. That's all I ask, Naruto replied. A commotion on the refugee lines drew their attention. The crowd parted to reveal a woman striding forward, her bearing regal despite ragged clothing. Unlike the other refugees, she carried herself with a warrior's confidence. One hand resting on the hilt of a curved blade at her hip. Tall and bronze-skinned, with hair the deep red of cooling embers braided intricately with golden beads, she moved with the lethal grace of a predator. Her eyes, the same distinctive violet as the child Naruto had noticed earlier, blazed with an intensity that suggested banked fury barely contained. Pretty words and water tricks, she called, her voice carrying the refined accent of the northern provinces despite her rough appearance. But when you leave, wanderer, what prevents the Scorpion clan from slaughtering us anyway? Their hatred runs deeper than any drought. Column bristled visibly. Mind your tongue, northerner. You address. I know exactly whom I address, she interrupted, stopping directly before Naruto and meeting his transformed gaze without flinching. The prophesied one who appears when dimensions intersect. I've heard the legends since childhood. What I haven't heard is how your intervention lasts beyond your presence. Unlike the others, she showed neither fear nor awe, only critical assessment and a demand for practical solutions. Naruto found her directness refreshing after years of either cowering reverence or hostile fear from those he encountered. You raise a fair point, he acknowledged. And you are Adira al-Saif, first blade of the Royal Guard of Zephyria, she replied, executing a precise formal bow that somehow managed to convey both respect and challenge simultaneously. Or I was, before the coup that sent us fleeing south. Understanding dawned in Column's expression. The northern princess, he said, surprise evident in his tone. We believed you executed with the rest of the royal family. Clearly, your information was incomplete, Adira replied coolly, before returning her attention to Naruto. My people need more than temporary intervention, divine wanderer. We need restoration of the rightful rule of law. Naruto studied her with growing interest. In 3 years of dimensional travel, he had encountered thousands of individuals in positions of power or desperation. Few had addressed him so directly, with neither supplication nor posturing. Political restoration falls outside my usual approach, he said carefully. I correct dimensional instabilities, prevent cross-reality contamination, and occasionally intervene in immediate humanitarian crises. Regime change tends to have complicated consequences. Adira's violet eyes narrowed. So the legends exaggerate. You're powerful, but selective in applying that power. Precisely, Naruto confirmed, unoffended by her assessment. Power without restraint causes more damage than it prevents. I've learned that lesson repeatedly. Something shifted in her expression. Not softening, exactly, but a reassessment. Then we find ourselves at an impasse. These people followed me south believing in restoration, not mere survival. Column interrupted, pragmatism overriding traditional enmity. The northern usurper sends scouts into our territory monthly searching for survivors of the royal line. If word reaches him that Princess Adira lives, he will bring his full army against us for harboring her, water or no water. Naruto glanced between them, pieces clicking into place. The situation was more complex than a simple case of persecution. The refugees weren't merely chakra aided outcasts. They were political exiles following their princess into harsh territory, where ancient prejudice against their mutations provided convenient justification for their intended elimination. The dimensional instability affecting this region isn't natural, he said after a moment's consideration. I sense the disruption from 12 dimensions away. Something or someone is deliberately manipulating the barriers here, which is why I came in the first place. The drought, the chakra mutations accelerating, they're symptoms of a larger problem. Adira's expression sharpened with interest. You suggest the usurper's activities might be connected to these dimensional disturbances. It's worth investigating, Naruto replied. If there's a connection, addressing the dimensional instability might naturally resolve the political situation as well. He turned to Column. Can your clan provide sanctuary for these refugees while I investigate? Not as prisoners or subjects, but as guests under formal protection. The war chief hesitated, generations of prejudice warring with immediate practical concerns. Finally, he nodded. Under the ancient laws, I can declare them clan friends for one full cycle of the Crimson Moon. Beyond that, the tribal council must approve. Acceptable, Naruto decided, then looked to Adira. And will you postpone your restoration plans long enough to help me investigate the source of the dimensional disturbance? Your knowledge of northern politics might prove essential. Pride and pragmatism battled visibly in her expression. I serve my people first, wanderer. If accompanying you serves that purpose, then I will do so. Her hand remained on her sword hilt, a warrior prepared for any outcome. But understand this, I am not your subject nor your supplicant. I am an ally of convenience, nothing more. Naruto smiled, genuine amusement warming his transformed features. I wouldn't have it any other way, Princess Adira. The Otsutsuki dimensional sanctuary had transformed dramatically in the 3 years since Naruto and Kimiko had claimed it. What had once been austere alien architecture now hummed with life and purpose, ancient technology seamlessly integrated with Kimiko's innovative designs. The central hall remained vast, its pearlescent columns stretching toward ceilings that reflected other dimensions, but the space had been reorganized into a functional monitoring center. Crystalline displays hovered at various stations, each tracking different aspects of the multiversal framework that Naruto now helped maintain. Amiko moved between these stations with practiced efficiency, her fingers dancing across interfaces that responded as much to thought as to physical touch. At 31, the brilliant scientist had hanged significantly from the academically focused researcher Naruto had first encountered. 3 years of interdimensional study had honed her brilliant mind further while softening her social AWK war. DNESS through constant collaboration with beings across multiple realities. She had adapted her appearance to her new life as well, trading conventional lab wear for clothing inspired by Otsutsuki signs but modified for practical functionality. Flowing garments in midnight blue with circuitry subtly woven into the fabric, allowing her to interface directly with the sanctuary's systems. Her midnight blue hair, once perpetually disheveled, now fell in a precise geometric cut that framed her face, accentuating amber eyes that had gained an otherworldly perceptiveness after years of exposure to dimensional energies. Energy fluctuations in the Scarlet Dunes dimension have stabilized, she announced to the apparently empty chamber, knowing Naruto would hear regardless of conventional distance. The aquifer redirection is holding at 94% efficiency, and I'm detecting significant drops in social hostility metrics. Whatever you did, it worked. Her voice echoed briefly before a spatial distortion rippled near the primary dimensional viewport. Naruto stepped through. The transition between realities now is effortless for him as walking through a doorway. Temporary solution at best, he replied, rolling his shoulders as his appearance shifted from the more imposing form he'd used in the desert dimension to a more relaxed manifestation. The 10 spectral tails remained visible but subdued, flowing like ghostly afterimages as he moved. The underlying instability remains. Kimiko nodded, immediately pulling up detailed analytical displays. I've been tracking the pattern. 70. N dimensions now show similar disruptions, localized environmental changes, accelerated evolutionary leaps, selective technology failures. Whatever's causing this is spreading systematically. She gestured toward a 3-dimensional map of interconnected realities, where pulsing red nodes highlighted affected dimensions. It's not random, Naruto. These points create a specific geometric pattern WH-N mapped against the dimensional lattice. Someone is deliberately targeting load-bearing junction points in the multiverse. Naruto studied the pattern, his transformed perception allowing him to say connections that would be invisible to conventional senses. It's like they're stress testing the barriers, he observed, applying pressure to specific points to measure the response. Exactly. Kimiko's eyes lit with the particular enthusiasm she reserved for scientific discoveries. I've been developing a new tracking algorithm based on your energy signature, the way your chakra naturally responds to these disturbances might help us identify the source. She hesitated, noticing something different about him. You brought someone back with you. It wasn't a question. After 3 years of close collaboration, Kimiko had developed an almost supernatural awareness of subtle changes in Naruto's energy patterns. He smiled slightly. Your observation skills continue to impress. Yes. Adira al-Saif, exiled princess from the northern province of the Scarlet Dunes dimension. She has information that might help us understand the political aspects of the disturbance. And she's waiting in the transition chamber, Kimiko concluded, already moving toward her workstation. I'll prepare the physiological stabilizers. Desert dimension inhabitants typically experience respiratory distress during their first transition to the sanctuary's atmospheric composition. She paused, glancing back at him with scientific curiosity. Royalty. That's a new approach for you. Usually you avoid political entanglements entirely. She's different, Naruto replied, materializing his usual clothing, a modernized version of his Hokage attire adapted to his transformed state. A warrior princess leading her people through exile, seeking restoration against a usurper. But more importantly, she has direct knowledge of the northern territories where the dimensional disruption is strongest. Kimiko's expression remained neutral, but her eyes reflected momentary calculation. I see. Practical considerations. Then, before Naruto could respond, a soft chime echoed through the sanctuary, one of dozens of communication systems Kimiko had established with various dimensional allies over the years. That's Sasuke, she noted, activating the corresponding dimensional viewport. Right on schedule for the monthly update. The crystalline surface rippled like disturbed water before resolving into an image of Sasuke Uchiha, his appearance barely changed from 3 years prior save for slightly long hair and the faint lines of exhaustion permanently etched around his visible eye. Naruto, he greeted with characteristic directness. We have a situation in the primary dimension. Naruto moved to stand before the viewport, concern immediately evident. Konoha, my family, they're safe, Sasuke assured him, but the dimensional tremors are increasing in frequency. Shikamaru's team record D12 significant events in the past week alone. The Barrier Scientific Division can't keep up with the repairs. Kimiko joined Naruto at the viewport, already analyzing the data Sasuke was transmitting. These readings match the pattern we're seeing across 17 other dimensions, she informed him. Whoever is causing these disruptions has added your home dimension to their target list. Sasuke's expression darkened. There's more. Orochimaru detected unusual chakra signatures at several disturbance sites, similar to the Otsutsuki, but not identical. His analysis suggests someone is harvesting the energy released during dimensional fractures. Weaponizing instability itself, Naruto murmured, pieces connecting in his mind. The disruptions aren't just tests, they're collection events. Kimiko's fingers flew across her instruments, correlating data from multiple sources. If that's true, Then the increasing frequency suggests they're accelerating their timeline. Whatever they're planning with this harvested energy, they're moving toward implementation. Sasuke nodded grimly. Orochimaru believes they're building toward a massive dimensional collapse, controlled destructio. And that would allow them to harvest unprecedented amounts of energy. At the cost of potentially millions of lives across multiple dimensions, Naruto concluded, his expression hardening as spectral. Tails manifested more vividly behind him, responding to his emotions. I'm sending you Orochimaru's complete analysis, Sasuke continued. Hinata asked me to tell you that Boruto has joined the Special Dimensional Research Division. He's developing techniques based on his karma seal that might help stabilize the barriers. A complex emotion flickered across Naruto's features, pride in his son's growth mixed with regret at missing it. After 3 years, such moments still affected him deeply, though he had learned to accept the necessary separation his transformation had required. Tell them, he began. Then paused as the sanctuary's alert system suddenly activated, bathing the chamber in pulsing amber light. Kimiko immediately moved to the primary monitoring station, concern evident in her efficient movements. Unauthorized dimensional transition detected, she reported, fingers dancing across controls. Someone's attempting to breach the sanctuary's outer barriers. Hostile, Naruto asked, already moving toward the source of the disturbance, power gathering around him instinctively. Uncertain, Kimiko replied, studying the energy signature. The pattern is unusual. Not matching any known dimensional traveler in our registry. Sasuke's image in the viewport shifted as he leaned forward. Could they have tracked our communication? Impossible, Kimiko stated confidently. Our quantum entanglement system doesn't leave conventional energy signatures to follow. The alert changed from amber to red, the sanctuary's ancient defenses activating automatically as the breach attempt intensified. I need to handle this, Naruto told Sasuke. Continue gathering information on the disruptions. I'll contact you once we've identified our visitor. The Uchiha nodded once, his image fading as the viewport deactivated. Bring Adira in from the transition chamber first, Kimiko advised, already implementing security protocols throughout the sanctuary. If this is hostile, we don't want her caught in the buffer zone. Naruto nodded, making a subtle gesture that caused reality to ripple between him and the transition chamber. Through this spatial distortion stepped Adira al-Saif, her expression reflecting the disorientation of interdimensional travel despite her effort to conceal it. She had changed from her battlefield attire into more formal clothing that allowed freedom of movement, a deep violet tunic over fitted black leggings, with her curved blade still prominently at her hip. The golden beads in her ember-red hair caught the sanctuary's light, creating the momentary illusion of flames dancing around her face. Her violet eyes widened slightly as she took in the vast chamber and its impossible architecture, but she quickly masked her astonishment behind a warrior's composure. Your sanctuary is not what I expected, she stated, voice steady despite the physiological stress of transition. No time for the full tour, Naruto replied, gesturing toward Kimiko. This is Dr. Kimiko Ishida, dimensional physicist and the sanctuary's co-administrator. Kimiko, Princess Adira al-Saif of Zephyria. Kimiko offered a precise formal bow, braided to the exact protocol appropriate for Adira's royal status in her home dimension, one of countless cultural details she had meticulously documented during her years of interdimensional research. An honor, Your Highness, she greeted. Under better circumstances, I would offer proper welcome rites, but we're currently managing a potential security situation. Adira returned the bow with equal precision, surprise briefly flickering across her features at Kimiko's knowledge of Zephyrian formal protocol. I prefer field conditions to court ceremony anyway, Doctor. How may I assist? Before Kimiko could respond, the sanctuary shuddered as the breach attempt intensified. Hairline fractures appeared in the air itself, leaking energy that resembled liquid lightning. Stay here, Naruto instructed both women, his form shifting as he drew more heavily on his power, the spectral tails becoming more pronounced. The outer barriers weren't designed to withstand this level of focused assault. Absolutely not, Adira countered immediately, drawing her curved blade. Though seemingly ordinary metal, the weapon hummed with subtle energy that suggested advanced enchantment. I didn't see our os dimensions to cower while others fight. Kimiko, more familiar with Naruto's capabilities, merely activated a personal shield device embedded in her clothing. Whoever's breaching our defenses GHT possess crucial information about the dimensional disruptions, she reminded him. We need intelligence more than protection. Naruto assessed both women briefly, the warrior princess with her enchanted blade and determined expression. The dimensional scientist with her technological defenses and analytical mind. Neither would stay safely behind, and both offered skills that might prove valuable. Stay behind my energy barrier, he conceded, extending his awareness toward the breach point. And Adira, that blade won't affect truly interdimensional entities. If our visitor isn't conventionally physical, don't engage directly. The princess's expression suggested she might challenge this assessment, but before she could speak, the breach point collapsed inward with a sound like shattering crystal. Where stable reality had existed moments before, a swirling vortex of dimensional energy now connected the sanctuary to somewhere, or someone, else. Through this destabilized portal stumbled a figure that appeared human at first glance, a woman with pale skin and platinum blonde hair cut in a severe geometric style. Her clothing resembled a military uniform from no known dimension, midden. Light blue with silver geometric patterns that shifted hypnotically across the fabric. Most striking, however, were her eyes, solid silver without pupil or iris, yet clearly capable of sight as they darted around the chamber. Assessing everything within human speed. Interdimensional transition successful, she announced in a voice that contained subtle harmonic overtones, as if multiple entities spoke simultaneously through one throat. Sanctuary protocols identified and bypassed. Primary target located, her silver gaze fixed directly on Naruto, completely ignoring both Kimiko and Adira. Naruto Uzumaki, Jubie vessel, dimensional anomaly designation Alpha Prime. She recited these identifiers with mechanical precision before her expression shifted subtly toward something almost resembling emotion. I have breached 16-dimensional barriers and sacrificed 43% of my operational capacity to locate you. Naruto maintained his defensive posture, power gathered but not yet released. You have me at a disadvantage. You know who I am, but I don't know you, or why you've forced your way into my sanctuary. The stranger's head tilted slightly, an unnervingly mechanical gesture. Designation is irrelevant. Function is messenger. She extended one hand, palm upward, where a small crystalline device materialized. I carry warning from the Dimensional Oversight Collective. Catastrophe. Sea collapse imminent across primary junction points. Previous calculations indicated 43 standard cycles before critical failure. Updated analysis shows acceleration. Collapse now predicted within 7.6 cycles. Kimiko stepped forward, scientific curiosity overcoming caution. The Dimensional Oversight Collective. There's no such organization in any registry we've encountered. The messenger's silver eyes flicked briefly toward Kimiko, then dismissed her as irrelevant, returning focus to Naruto. The collective operates beyond conventional dimensional frameworks. We monitor and maintain structure. Integrity of the multiverse from external observation points. If that's true, Naruto questioned, why haven't you intervened directly in the disruptions we've been tracking? Something resemble. Frustration crossed the messenger's inhuman features. Intervention protocols require multiple tier authorization. Warning protocols do not. I have exceeded operational parameters to deliver this message directly. Adira, who had been studying the messenger with narrowed eyes, suddenly moved closer. She's damaged, the princess observed. Look at the energy fluctuations along her left side. Whatever barriers she crossed did significant harm. The messenger's expression tightened momentarily. Damage assessment accurate. Structural integrity failing. Message delivery primary directive. Superseding self-preservation protocols. As if to confirm Adira's observation, the messenger's form flickered, momentarily revealing a complex energy structure beneath the humanoid appearance. Something that resembled circuitry combined with organic elements, neither fully mechanical nor fully biological. The dimensional collapse is not random degradation, she continued, urgency entering her harmonic voice as her form destabilized further. Targeted sabotage by entities designated harbingers, detected across multiple realities. They harvest collapse energy for prohibited technology activation. Dimensional Oversight Collective has initiated emergency countermeasures, but interference from unknown source prevents direct intervention. She thrust the crystalline device toward Naruto. Critical data. Coordinates of primary sabotage nexus points. Harbinger command structure identification. Countermeasure recommendations. Naruto accepted the device cautiously, his transformed sense detecting no immediate threat from the object itself. Why come to me specifically? Surely the collective has its own agents. The messenger's form flickered more severely, sections of her apparent body becoming transparent as her energy structure failed. You are unique, Naruto Uzumaki. A conscious 10 tails existing across dimensional boundaries simultaneously. The only entity capable of tearing Harbinger technology without causing further dimensional fracturing. The collective's analysts calculate you are the variable that determines multiverse survival or collapse. Who are these Harbingers? Kimiko questioned, already scanning the messenger with one of her instruments. What's their objective in causing dimensional collapse? The messenger's silver eyes dimmed noticeably, her voice weakening. Former collective members, exiled for prohibited experimentation. They believe controlled destruction of specific dimensional junctions will create a convergence point, a single real ITY formed from the merged fragments of collapsed dimensions. They seek to rule this new singular reality as gods. Her form destabilized further, entire portions now transparent or missing completely. Message delivered. Primary directive completed. Secondary directive. Warning. The Harbingers know of you, Jubie vessel. They fear your interference. They will target those connected to you first, across all dimensions. With those final words, the messenger's form collapsed entirely, dissolving into particles of pure energy that dissipated throughout the chamber before fading completely, leaving only the crystalline device in Naruto's hand as evidence she had ever existed. Silence held for several heartbeats as the three processed this unexpected development. Well, Adira finally remarked, sheathing her blade with practiced precision, when you said you were investigating dimensional disturbances, you failed to mention interdimensional conspiracies and imminent multiversal collapse. Kimiko was already moving toward her primary workstation, mind racing with implications. The data in that crystal could be revolutionary. If this dimensional oversight collective has been monitoring the multiverse from outside conventional dimensional frameworks, their understanding of the structural mechanics would far exceed anything we've developed. Naruto studied the crystal thoughtfully, his transformed perception allowing him to see complex energy patterns swirling within its seemingly solid structure. The question is whether we can trust this information. We have no way to verify this messenger's identity or the existence of this collective. Her damage was real, Adira noted practically. Whatever she was, she sacrificed herself to deliver that message. That suggests genuine urgency, if nothing else. Agreed, Kimiko said, already preparing systems to interface with the crystal. And the pattern of dimensional disruptions we've been tracking matches her description of targeted sabotage rather than natural degradation. Naruto nodded slowly, decision forming. We'll analyze the data, but proceed with caution. If these harbingers are deliberately causing dimensional collapse, we need to understand their methods before confronting them directly. He turned to Adira, expression grave. The messenger's warning about targeting those connected to me changes things. Your people may be in greater danger than we realized if the harbingers have identified your dimension as one I've visited. The princess straightened, regal determination evident in her bearing. Quote, all the more reason to stop them quickly. My people have survived exile and persecution. I won't lose them to interdimensional terrorists with delusions of godhood. We should inform Sasuke immediately, Kimiko suggested, already establishing a secure connection. If the harbingers are targeting connections to you, your home dimension needs heightened protection. Naruto closed his eyes briefly, extending his awareness across dimensional boundaries toward his original world. Unlike ordinary perception, which traveled at the speed of light, his consciousness moved through the dimensional lattice instantaneously, sensing distortions and fluctuations in the multiverse's structure. What he found confirmed his worst fears. It's already beginning, he announced, opening eyes that now blazed with intensified power. I can sense multiple dimensional fractures forming around Konoha, micro breaches designed to destabilize the primary barriers. They're following the same pattern we observed in the other 17 dimensions. Kimiko's fingers flew across her instruments, correlating data. The timing matches the messenger's warning. If the harbingers know you've received their information, they might accelerate their timeline. Quote, Then we respond in kind, Naruto decided, his 10 spectral tails manifesting fully as he channeled deeper levels of his power. Kimiko, extract everything useful from that crystal. Establish communication with Sasuke and coordinate defense protocols for Konoha. He turned to Adira, whose expression had shifted from skepticism to focused determination. Quote, "You said you weren't my subject or supplicant, but an ally of convenience. That convenience has arrived sooner than either of us expected. I need your knowledge of political structures to help identify why potential harbinger infiltration in your dimension." The warrior princess nodded sharply, hand resting on her blade's hilt. The northern usurper's rise to power never made logical sense, too many coincidences. Too many previously loyal generals suddenly changing allegiance. If external forces were involved, that would explain much. Good, Naruto acknowledged. Work with Kimiko to analyze political patterns against the dimensional disruption data. Look for correlations between leadership changes and barrier weakening. And you? Kimiko asked, though she already suspected his answer from the way his power was gathering. I'm going to reinforce the barriers around Konoha personally, he replied, reality already beginning to warp around him as he prepared for dimensional transition. Quote, if the harbingers want to target my connections, they'll learn why that's a fatal mistake. Before either woman could respond, Naruto's form blurred, spectral tails wrapping around him as he folded space itself, vanishing from the sanctuary in a flash of golden-purple light. Adira stared at the space he had occupied, genuine surprise momentarily overtaking her warrior's composure. Does he always disappear like that? Kimiko smiled slightly, already returning to her instruments with practiced efficiency. Only when something threatens those he cares about. For all his godlike power, his heart remains stubbornly, admirably human. She gestured toward a workstation that reconfigured itself to accommodate a new user. Now, Your Highness, let's analyze those political patterns. The fate of multiple dimensions may depend on identifying the harbingers, agents in your world. Adira approached the alien technology with cautious curiosity, her violet eyes reflecting determination that matched Kimiko's own. I've spent 3 years plotting to reclaim my throne, she said quietly. If interdimensional conspirators are behind my family's downfall, simply restoring the monarchy won't be enough. We'll need to excise the infection completely. The scientist nodded in understanding, recognizing the steel beneath the princess's composed exterior. If the harbingers have infiltrated your dimension's power structures, exposure alone won't defeat them. They'll have contingency plans, fail-safes. Then we'll dismantle those too, Adira replied with quiet certainty, studying the complex data displays with remarkable adaptability for someone encountering such technology for the first time. I didn't survive assassination attempts, desert exile, and persecution to watch my world collapse into interdimensional chaos. Kimiko studied the warrior princess thoughtfully, recognizing qualities that complemented their existing team's capabilities, tactical thinking, political awareness, and a survivor's pragmatism that balanced Naruto's idealism and her own scientific detachment. You might just fit in here, Princess Adira, she observed, offering a rare smile. Adira's violet eyes met hers directly, a warrior's assessment in her gaze. That remains to be seen, Dr. Ishida. But I look forward to proving my worth in battle rather than conversation. Fair enough, Kimiko conceded, turning back to the crystalline device that might hold the key to understanding the multiversal threat they faced. Let's see what secrets our mysterious messenger sacrificed herself to deliver. In the space between dimensions, a non-location where conventional physics held no meaning, Naruto moved with practiced certainty through conceptual rather than physical space. His consciousness stretched across multiple realities simultaneously, perceiving the intricate lattice of dimensional boundaries that separated infinite variants of existence. Where once such awareness would have overwhelmed his human mind, 3 years of experience had taught him to process multidimensional perception as naturally as breathing. He existed in a constant state of quantum superposition, simultaneously in all dimensions and none, able to focus his presence where needed while maintaining awareness of the broader multiverse. The messenger's warning echoed in his thoughts as he tracked the distinct energy signature of dimensional sabotage spreading toward his home reality. Unlike natural degradation, which created random fracture patterns. These disturbances followed precise geometric format. Ions, mathematical constructs designed to maximize energy release while controlling the direction of collapse. The implications were disturbing. Such precision required intimate knowledge of dimension mechanics beyond what even Kimiko had developed after years of dedicated research. If these harbingers possessed that level of understanding, they represented a far more sophisticated threat than he had initially believed. As he approached Konoha's dimensional coordinates, Naruto sensed familiar chakra signatures: Sasuke's distinctive Rinnegan energy, Sakura's precisely controlled medical chakra, Hinata's gentle but formidable Byakugan presence, and dozens more he recognized instantly despite 3 years of separation. Most prominent among them, growing stronger with maturity and training, was Boruto's unique energy, his son's chakra now bearing distinctive patterns that reflected both inherited potential and hard-earned skill. Protective instinct surged through Naruto's transformed consciousness. Whatever these harbingers intended, they had chosen the wrong dimensional anchor point to target. Rather than materializing directly in Konoha, which would create a dangerous concentrat ion of his reality-altering energy in an already destabilized environment, Naruto manifested at the dimensional boundaries surrounding the village. Here, in the conceptual space where physical reality met the void between dimensions, he could work without endangering those within. The damage was immediately apparent to his enhanced perception. Dozens of micro-fractures had been strategically placed along Konoha's dimensional barriers, each precisely calibrated to propagate along specific vectors. Left untreated, these fractures would eventually connect, creating a cascading collapse that would tear the village, and potentially the entire dimension, apart at a fundamental level. More disturbing was the evidence of energy harvesting Sasuke had reported. Each fracture point showed signs of sophisticated extraction technology, interdimensional siphons drawing off the released energy for collection elsewhere. Naruto extended his awareness, tracing these siphons back to their source, but encountered sophisticated dimensional baffles designed to obscure their origin. Whoever had created this system understood dimensional mechanics well enough to hide their tracks from even his enhanced perception. Clever, he acknowledged grudgingly, but not clever enough. Rather than attempting to trace the siphons, which would alert their creators to his presence, Naruto focused on the fractures themselves. Drawing on the Ten Tails' primal energy now fully integrated with his consciousness, he began the meticulous process of dimensional repair. Unlike his earlier attempts at such work, which had resembled crude patching, 3 years of experience had refined his technique into something approaching artistic precision. He worked at the quantum level, realigning dimensional constants, reinforcing probability fields, and weaving reality back into proper alignment. Where the fractures had been deliberately engineered to propagate destruction, Naruto introduced counter patterns, stabilizing G matrices that would not only heal the current damage but resist future attempts at sabotage. He imbued these matrices with a fraction of his own distinctive energy signature, creating an early warning system that would alert him to any further tampering. The work demanded concentration beyond ordinary human capability, requiring simultaneous awareness of quantum interactions across multiple layers of reality. Even with his transformed consciousness, the precision needed taxed his abilities to their limit. As he completed the repairs to the outer barriers, a distinctive energy signature suddenly flared nearby, a presence he would recognize anywhere. "I thought I sensed you." Sasuke's voice came from directly behind him, the Uchiha having used his Rinnegan to shift partially outside conventional reality to reach Naruto's working location. "Reinforcing the barriers yourself." Naruto didn't turn, continuing his delicate manipulations of quantum fields as he responded. "The damage is worse than your reports indicated. Precisely engineered collapse points with integrated energy siphons. Someone has detailed knowledge of Konoha's dimensional structure." Sasuke moved to his side, matched eyes studying the barrier repairs with his own enhanced perception. "Orochimaru suspected as much. The attack patterns showed familiarity with our defensive capabilities." "Inside knowledge, a infiltration?" Naruto asked, concern evident despite his focus on the repairs. "Possible," Sasuke acknowledged grimly. "Or historical data. Dimensional travelers could have observed Konoha during previous eras, gathering intelligence long before we were aware of their existence." Naruto completed the final repair sequence, the dimensional barriers around Konoha now glowing with subtle reinforcement patterns visible only to those with enhanced perception. As he finished, he allowed his awareness to contract slightly, focusing more fully on his conversation with his oldest friend. "We received a warning," he explained, turning to face Sasuke properly. "A messenger claiming to represent something called the Dimensional Oversight Collective breached the Sanctuary's defenses to deliver information about a group called the Harbingers, former collective members apparently responsible for the dimensional sabotage." Sasuke's expression remained impassive, but Naruto detected the subtle shift in his chakra that indicated intense interest. "Credible, unknown," Naruto admitted, "but her information matches patterns we've observed across multiple dimensions. Kimiko is analyzing the data crystal she provided before she disintegrated," Naruto finished. "Some kind of energy construct, severely damaged from breaching dimensional barriers to reach us." Sasuke absorbed this information with characteristic efficiency, immediately considering strategic implications. "If this threat is as significant as your messenger suggested, we should coordinate defense across all allied dimensions." "Agreed. But first, I need to see the damage reports from inside Konoha. If these harbingers are targeting connections to me specifically, everyone here is at risk." Sasuke studied him for a moment before responding. "You can't materialize fully within the village. Your energy concentration would destabilize the barriers you just repaired." "I know," Naruto acknowledged, frustration evident in his tone. Despite 3 years of practice controlling his transformed state, the fundamental incompatibility between his power and conventional reality remained an insurmountable barrier. "But I need more detailed information than long-distance sensing can provide." After a moment's consideration, Sasuke activated his Rinnegan more fully, creating a dimensional viewport. Similar to those in Naruto's sanctuary, a technique he had developed specifically for communication across reality barriers. "This should work," he stated, the viewport expanding to show Konoha's current state from an elevated perspective. The village had changed significantly in 3 years. New structures incorporated advanced technology alongside traditional architectural elements, creating a harmony between innovation and heritage that reflected Konoha's evolution. Most notable was the massive research complex that had replaced the old academy, a facility dedicated to understanding and defending against dimensional threats. "The Dimensional Research Division," Sasuke explained, noting Naruto's focus. "Established 2 years ago under joint leadership from Shikamaru and Orochimaru. Your son has become one of their key operatives." Pride and regret mingled in Naruto's expression as he absorbed this information. "How is he?" Sasuke's typically stoic expression softened marginally. "Stubborn, brilliant, determined to find ways to stabilize dimensional barriers enough for you to return permanently. He's combined Karma Seal principles with Hyuga Chakra control techniques to develop new barrier reinforcement methods." And Himawari. Hinata leads the Hyuga contingent within the research division. Her Byakugan perception has proven invaluable for detecting dimensional anomalies. Himawari has begun training as a dimensional sensor. Her unique chakra sensitivity shows promise for early warning systems. Naruto absorbed this information silently, emotions carefully controlled behind his transformed features. His family had adapted to his absence, finding ways to continue the fight from their side of the dimensional barriers. The knowledge brought both comfort and sharp longing. "The primary dimensional incursions have targeted 3 specific locations," Sasuke continued, shifting the viewport to highlight these areas. "The Hokage Monument, the former site of the Valley of the End, and the Dimensional Research Facility itself. All locations with strong connections to you. Personal targeting," Naruto concluded grimly. "The messenger was right. There's something else," Sasuke added, hesitation uncharacteristic in his normally direct communication. Witnesses reported seeing figures at the incursion sites, humanoid but wrong, somehow. Orochimaru captured partial sensor readings suggesting Otsutsuki adjacent chakra signatures, but not fully matching known Otsutsuki patterns. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Hybrid energy signatures. That could explain how they're manipulating dimensional barriers with such precision. Possibly. Orochimaru has a theory that the viewport suddenly distorted, ripples of interference disrupting the connection as alarms blared faintly from Konoha's side. Dimensional breach in progress, came Shikamaru's voice, faint but urgent through the fluctuating connection. Multiple incursion points simultaneously, all personnel to defensive positions. Sasuke's expression hardened as he maintained the failing viewport through sheer will. It's happening now. They're launching a coordinated attack. Through the distortion, Naruto glimpsed figures materializing at various points throughout Konoha, humanoid forms with distinctive silver-white hair and pale skin reminiscent of the Otsutsuki clan, but with disturbing modifications. Where Kagaya and her descendants had appeared elegantly alien, these entities seemed unnaturally augmented, their bodies integrated with technological components that pulsed with harvested dimensional energy. Harbingers, Naruto realized aloud, the messenger's warning now confirmed beyond doubt. As Konoha's defenders mobilized to counter the incursion, Naruto faced an impasse. BLE choice: maintain his distance to preserve the dimensional barriers he had just repaired, or intervene directly to protect those he loved at the risk of causing catastrophic destabilization through his presence. Before he could decide, one of the Harbinger figures looked directly toward the viewport, as if sensing their observation across dimensional boundaries. Its eyes, solid black without iris or pupil, narrowed in recognition. And it raised a hand bearing a device of unknown design. "They've detected us," Sasuke warned, already moving to close the connection. Too late. The device activated, sending a pulse of corrupted dimensional energy directly through the viewport. Sasuke dismissed the connection instantly, but not before the leading edge of the pulse crossed the boundary. The assaulting dimensional shockwave threw both Naruto and Sasuke backward, reality itself shuddering around them as the pulse interacted with the barriers. Targeted interdimensional weaponry, Sasuke observed grimly, recovering his stance with practiced efficiency. They knew we were watching and had technology prepared specifically to attack across dimensional boundaries. Naruto's transformed eyes blazed with barely contained fury, 10 spectral tails lashing behind him in response to his emotions. "They're prepared for me specifically. The messenger was right. They know who I am and what I'm capable of. Which means they've been planning this assault for some time," Sasuke concluded, already activating his full combat capabilities, Susanoo energy manifesting around him. "And launching it now suggests they believe they have an advantage." Naruto extended his awareness, assessing the rapidly deteriorating situation. The pulse weapon had destabilized the newly reinforced barriers, creating cascade effects that threatened to undo his repairs entirely. Simultaneously, the coordinated Harbinger incursion inside Konoha was targeting key defensive infrastructure with precision that Stead intimate knowledge of the village's capabilities. "I can't directly intervene without risking catastrophic dimensional collapse," he said, frustration evident in his voice. "My energy signature is too disruptive to the already compromised barriers." Sasuke nodded in understanding, having witnessed the destructive side effects of Naruto's power in unstable environments before. "I'll handle the defense coordination. You focus on containing the dimensional damage from this side." As his oldest friend prepared to return to Konoha's defense, Naruto made a swift decision. "Wait, take this." He extended his hand, concentrating his power into a small crystalline construct similar to the one the messenger had provided. Within it, he encoded a specific aspect of his chakra, not his full power, which would be devastating in the current environment, but a carefully calibrated fragment designed for barrier reinforcement. "Give this to Boruto," he instructed. "It should temporarily stabilize the dimensional barriers from within, buying time for evacuation if necessary." Sasuke accepted the construct, understanding its significance immediately. "This contains a portion of your chakra. A controlled fragment," Naruto clarified, "safe for use in conventional reality, but powerful enough to counter the Harbinger's disruption technology temporarily." After a moment's hesitation, he added, "And tell my family I'm working on a more permanent solution. These attacks have confirmed what I've suspected. I need to find a way to exist in their reality without destabilizing it." Sasuke studied him with the insight born from decades of friendship. "You have an idea already." It wasn't a question, but Naruto nodded confirmation anyway. "The messenger's arrival suggested possibilities I hadn't considered. If interdimensional entities can modulate their energy signatures to achieve temporary compatibility with our reality, then you might be able to do the same," Sasuke concluded. "Risky. Necessary," Naruto countered firmly. I won't remain isolated while these harbingers target those I care about across dimensions. With uncharacteristic gentleness, Sasuke placed his hand briefly on Naruto's shoulder, one of the few beings in any dimension who could touch the transformed Ten Tails vessel without risk. We'll hold until you find your solution. We always do. With that, he activated his Rinnegan's dimensional transportation ability, vanishing in a ripple of distorted space to rejoin Konoha's defenders. Alone at the boundary between realities, Naruto turned his attention to the damaged dimensional barriers. The Harbingers' coordinated attack had revealed both their capabilities and their intentions more clearly than months of investigation had achieved. EY weren't simply causing random destruction, they were systematically targeting specific dimensional anchor points with intimate knowledge of how reality itself functioned. The precision suggested planning spanning years, perhaps decades. As he began the complex process of repairing the weaponized damage, Naruto's thoughts returned to the sanctuary where Kimiko and Adira would be analyzing the messenger's data crystal. If the Dimensional Oversight Collective truly existed and possessed knowledge of the Harbingers' plans, that information might prove crucial to countering their larger strategy. His immediate concern, however, remained Konoha's defense. Through his dimensional awareness, he sensed the battle unfolding, Sasuke coordinating with Boruto and the other defenders, Hinata's Byakugan identifying dimensional weak points. Sakura's medical teams treating injuries from weapons that affected chakra systems in unprecedented ways. They were fighting effectively, but the Harbingers' dimensional technology gave them significant advantages. Conventional shinobi techniques, even those as powerful as Sasuke's Rinnegan abilities, weren't designed to counter threats that operated partially outside conventional reality. As Naruto completed another section of barrier repair, a disturbing pattern emerged in the damage. The Harbingers weren't simply attacking Konoha, they were systematically harvesting specific chakra frequencies unique to that dimension, particularly those associated with the legacy of the Sage of Six Paths and the original Ten Tails. They're collecting the chakra building blocks, he realized aloud. Components needed to recreate something similar to what I've become. The implications were staggering. If the Harbingers sought to create their own version of a conscious Ten Tails vessel, one under their control rather than functioning independently as Naruto did, the threat extended far beyond simple dimensional sabotage. With renewed urgency, Naruto accelerated his repair work, simultaneously extending his awareness back toward the sanctuary to alert Kimiko to this development. The dimensional physics specialist would understand the implications immediately and could begin formulating countermeasures. As he worked between dimensions, Naruto's transformed consciousness processed information across multiple levels simultaneously, assessing damage, implementing repairs, analyzing attack patterns, and developing strategic responses. What would have overwhelmed even the most brilliant human mind flowed naturally through his expanded awareness, the Ten Tails aspect of his being handling computational complexities beyond conventional comprehension. Yet beneath this godlike processing capacity, his human heart remained focused on a single priority that transcended even multiversal threats, protecting those he loved across all dimensions, and finding a way to bridge the gap that had separated him from them for 3 long years. The Harbingers had made a critical miscalculation in targeting his connections. They had revealed themselves prematurely, exposing capabilities and intentions that might otherwise have remained hidden until their plans were further advanced. Most importantly, they had given Naruto Uzumaki, the Ten Tails Reborn, the divine wanderer of prophecy, protector of the multiverse, something he had lacked since his transformation, a concrete enemy to fight, a specific threat to counter, and a clear path toward potentially ending his dimensional exile. As he completed the final barrier repairs, a grim smile formed on his transformed features. The Harbingers had declared war across dimensions, targeting everything and everyone he valued. They were about to discover why that was the worst possible strategy they could have chosen. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Echoes Across Worlds. Ancient stone groaned beneath Naruto's feet as he navigated the labyrinthine ruins. Moonlight filtered through crumbling ceilings, sting elongated shadows across hieroglyphs that predated human civilization. Here, in the dimensional pocket that had once housed Kagaya Otsutsuki's ancestral palace, time flowed differently, sometimes faster, sometimes agonizingly slower than the realities surrounding it. Naruto moved with deliberate care, his transformed senses perceiving layers of reality simultaneously. The spectral tails behind him remained subdued, wisps of divine energy rather than the blazing manifestations he employed in combat. In this sacred place, flaunting such power would be both disrespectful and dangerous. SA security seals are remarkably preserved, he murmured, examining interlocking patterns of chakra that had maintained their integrity for millennia. The craftsmanship spoke of civilization far beyond even the most advanced shinobi techniques, dimensional mathematics woven directly into the fabric of reality. 3 days had passed since the Harbinger's attack on Konoha. Though Sasuke and the Oath-ers had successfully repelled the incursion, the brief battle had revealed disturbing capabilities that demanded immediate investigation. Hence Naruto's journey to this forgotten place, perhaps the ONL. Y location in any dimension that might contain information about the Otsutsuki's true origins and the dimensional technologies the Harbingers now employed. A soft chime from a device at his wrist indicated an incoming communication. Kimiko's voice emanated from the small crystal, her tone carrying the particular blend of scientific excitement and pragmatic focus that characterized her approach to dimensional mysteries. Naruto, are you receiving? The temporal distortion is stronger than predicted. Our calculations suggest a 37% time dilation effect in your current location. Receiving clearly, he confirmed, pausing before an archway covered in symbols that shifted subtly as he observed them. Time feels compressed here. Denser somehow. Fascinating, Kimiko replied, the sound of rapid typing accompanying her voice. That matches the theoretical models for dimensional fold points. You're likely near a nexus where multiple realities intersect naturally. Naruto studied the shifting symbols with greater interest. That would explain the security measures. The deeper sections appear to use recursive dimension locking. Each chamber exists partially in different realities simultaneously. Precisely why you're uniquely qualified for this exploration, Kimiko noted. Any conventional explorer would be shunted into a single-dimensional aspect, missing crucial information. How are things at the sanctuary? He asked, carefully deactivating the first layer of security seals with precisely modulated chakra. Stable, though our guest is growing restless. Princess Adira has exhausted the historical archives regarding her dimension and is now, quote, desperate for something more productive than reading, end quote. Naruto smiled slightly, picturing warrior princess's frustration with scholarly activities. And the messenger's data crystal. A slight hesitation preceded Kimiko's response. 87% decoded. The encryption is unlike anything I've encountered. It adapts to our analysis methods. Almost as if it's alive somehow. That gave Naruto pause. Alive, not literally, but it demonstrates learning algorithms far beyond current technological capabilities. The information it's revealed so far confirms our suspicions about the Harbingers. They're systematically harvesting dimensional collapse energy, apparently for me kind of massive dimensional engineering project. Any specifics on their ultimate goal? Nothing concrete yet, but I've identified coordinates for what appears to be their primary operational base, a dimension so heavily fortified with barrier technology that it barely registers on conventional scanning. The archway before Naruto pulsed once as the final seal deactivated, revealing a vast circular chamber beyond. Send those coordinates to my communicator. Once I've completed this investigation, we may need to launch a direct reconnaissance mission. Already done, Kimiko confirmed. Be careful, Naruto. The temporal distortion is increasing the deeper you go. If it exceeds 50%, we may lose communication entirely. Understood. I'll maintain regular contact. As the communication ended, Naruto stepped through the archway into the chamber beyond. Unlike the weathered exterior ruins, this space appeared pristine, a perfect circle with walls of iridescent material that shifted between opalescent white and deepest black depending on the angle of observation. At the center stood a crystalline dais surrounded by 7 pillars of the same material, each inscribed with symbols that emitted subtle pulses of multichromatic light. The Recordkeeper's Sanctum, Naruto breathed, recognizing the description from ancient texts Sasuke had discovered years earlier. According to those fragmentary accounts, the chamber housed the complete historical records of Otsutsuki civilization, including their dimensional travel techniques and the true origin of the 10 Tails. He approached cautiously, his transformed senses detecting multiple layers of security far more sophisticated than those guarding the entrance. These weren't simple barrier techniques but fundamental alterations to space-time itself, conceptual locks that would prevent unauthorized access by literally rewriting the intruder's position in reality. For an ordinary being, even one as powerful as a cage, such defenses would be insurmountable. But Naruto's transformation had fundamentally changed his relationship with reality itself. As the Ten Tails Reborn, he existed partially outside conventional dimensional constraints, allowing him to perceive and manipulate the very fabric of existence. He studied the security system thoughtfully, identifying its operational principles through careful observation. Rather than attempting to deactivate it, which might trigger additional defenses, he adjusted his own dimensional frequency to match the harmonic resonance of the chamber itself. The process required exquisite control, modulating his transformed energy to create perfect synchronization with the ancient technology. Gradually, the security barriers recognized him not as an intruder but as a natural extension of the chamber's dimensional framework. The crystalline dais responded, illuminating with soft blue-white light that spread to the surrounding pillars. "Access granted to dimensional variant acknowledged," announced a voice that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously, speaking in a language that should have been incomprehensible yet Naruto understood perfectly. "State inquiry parameters, observer." Naruto stepped onto the dais, feeling reality shift subtly around him as the chamber's systems fully activated. "I seek information regarding Otsutsuki dimensional manipulation technologies, specifically those related to controlled dimensional collapse and energy harvesting." The pillars pulsed in complex patterns, apparently processing his request. After several moments, the voice responded, "Inquiry contains restricted parameters. Verification required. Present spiritual signature for analysis." Understanding the request intuitively, Naruto channeled a measured portion of his transformed chakra into the dais. The crystalline surface absorbed the energy, analyzing its unique composition, human and Biju chakra perfectly integrated with fragments from multiple dimensions, creating a signature unlike anything the ancient system had likely encountered before. The chamber fell silent for nearly a minute, the pillars flashing in increasingly complex patterns as the verification process continued. Finally, the central dais glowed brighter, projecting a three-dimensional image above its surface, a perfect holographic representation of an Otsutsuki figure unlike any Naruto had encountered before. Unlike Kagaya's aristocratic appearance or Momoshiki's arrogant bearing, this figure appeared scholarly, tall and slender with flowing robes bearing complex mathematical symbols. Most striking were the eyes, concentric rings similar to the Rinnegan but with additional patterns that suggested capabilities beyond even that legendary dojutsu. "Fascinating," the projection stated, studying Naruto with evident scientific interest. "You bear the essence of Shinju integration but maintain individuated consciousness. This outcome was theorized but never successfully implemented in any recorded dimension." "Who are you?" Naruto asked, sensing that this was no simple recording but something far more sophisticated. "I am Chronos Null, keeper of dimensional records for the Otsutsuki Grand Conclave," the figure replied. "Or rather, I am the consciousness imprint of that individual, preserved within this system following my physical termination approximately 73,842 local temporal cycles ago. An artificial intelligence," Naruto realized, using terminology he had learned from Kimiko. The projection tilted its head slightly. "An inadequate but serviceable approximation. My consciousness was transferred completely, though limited to this facility's operational parameters." Deciding to focus on his primary objective rather than the philosophical implications, Naruto continued, "I need information about dimensional collapse technologies. A group calling themselves the Harbingers is systematically destabilizing dimensional boundaries across multiple realities." "Harbingers," Chronos Null repeated, the name triggering visible processing activity in the surrounding pillars. "Designation unknown in primary database. However, methodology described match prohibited technologies documented in the sealed archives." The holographic display shifted, showing complex schematics for devices that manipulated dimensional boundaries at fundamental levels. The designs incorporated components that Naruto recognized from the Harbingers, weapons used during the Konoha attack. The Dimensional Severance Protocol, Chronos Null explained. Developed during the final Convergence War, these technologies enable controlled destabilization of dimensional boundaries for strategic purposes. Classified as extinction-level armaments and sealed by direct order of the Grand Conclave. Why would anyone develop such weapons? Naruto asked, studying the schematics with growing concern. The theoretical destructive potential far exceeded even his worst assumptions. Resource acquisition, the consciousness imprint replied matter-of-factly. Late-period Otsutsuki civilization faced dimensional energy depletion across primary territories. Radica, L factions proposed controlled destruction of lesser dimensions to harvest their fundamental energies for redistribution to worthy realities. The casual description of multiversal genocide chilled Naruto despite his transformed state. These harbingers appear to be implementing exactly that strategy. They're systematically targeting dimensional junction points, harvesting the released energy. Chronos Null processed this information, the pillars pulsing with increased intensity. If accurate, this represents an existential threat to dimensional stability across all connected realities. The Severance Protocol was never intended for wide implementation. Simulations projected catastrophic cascade failures extending beyond targeted dimensions. Exactly our concern, Naruto confirmed. Is there a countermeasure? Some way to neutralize these technologies once deployed? The holographic figure stilled momentarily, apparently accessing deeper archives. When it spoke again, its voice carried a more formal tone, accessing sealed protocol archives. Authorization level Omega Prime acknowledged based on applicant's dimensional resonance pattern. Displaying countermeasure schematics. Project Ouroboros. The display transformed again, showing far more complex designs. Technologies that appeared to incorporate elements of organic systems alongside mechanical components and pure energy constructs. At the center of these designs was a familiar spiral pattern that resonated with Naruto's deepest memories. The dimensional harmonic stabilizer, Chronos Null explained. Theoretical, countermeasure designed to neutralize severance technologies through synchronized dimensional reinforcement. Never constructed due to prohibitive energy requirements and lack of suitable consciousness matrix to provide operational guidance. Quote, Naruto studied the designs with growing excitement. The energy requirements, it would need a power source capable of affecting multiple dimensions simultaneously. Correct. Theoretical models required energy equivalent to approximately 3.7 complete Shinju harvests, harmonized across a minimum of 9-dimensional frequencies. Which I can potentially provide, Naruto realized. His 10 spectral tails manifesting more vividly in response to his excitement. As a conscious 10 tails vessel with integrated energy from multiple dimensions, I might be able to power such a device. Chronos Null studied him with renewed interest. Your dimensional resonance pattern suggests sufficient energy capacity. However, the consciousness matrix requirement presents additional complications. The operational interface would need to process multidimensional calculations at rates beyond conventional neural architecture. I've had 3 years to adapt to multidimensional perception, Naruto countered, and I have allies with expertise in dimensional physics who could assist with implementation. The projection seemed to consider this, its expression shifting subtly toward what might have been approval. A practical approach. I will provide complete technical specifications for Project Ouroboros. However, construction will require materials not readily available in standard dimensional configurations. What kind of materials? Primarily, crystalline matrices capable of channeling multidimensional energies without degradation. The original specifications called for Otsutsuki prime matter, a substance cultivated only in the ancestral dimension. Naruto frowned slightly, which is likely inaccessible after all this time. Correct. However, alternative materials were theorized. The display shifted again, showing a geological formation Naruto recognized immediately. Natural deposits of dimensionally resonant crystals formed at junction points where multiple realities intersect. These convergence crystals possess nearly identical properties to prime matter when properly processed. And where can these crystals be found? The holographic display expanded to show a map of interconnected dimensions, with several points highlighted in pulsing red. 7 primary deposits identified across the dimensional lattice. Most accessible from your current position would be the formation known as the crystal spires in dimension designation K173, approximately 2.4 harmonic frequencies from your primary reality. Naruto committed the locations to memory, already formulating plans for expeditions to collect the necessary materials. This is exactly what we needed. With these specifications, we might be able to counter the Harbingers' activities before they cause irreversible damage. A practical assessment, Chrono's Null acknowledged. However, I must provide standard warning protocols. Project Ouroboros remains theoretical technology. Implementation carries significant risks, including potential acceleration of the very dimensional collapse it seeks to prevent if improperly calibrated. Noted, Naruto replied, fully understanding the gravity of such undertakings. We'll proceed with appropriate caution. The projection studied him for another moment before adding, one final advisory, my records indicate that Sever Ant's protocol technologies require specialized knowledge to implement effectively. If these Harbingers possess functional versions, they likely have access to Otsutsuki technical archives or direct assistance from individuals with relevant expertise. The implication was clear. They might be facing enemies with intimate knowledge of Otsutsuki technologies, possibly even Otsutsuki descendants themselves. Transfer all relevant data to my communication device, Naruto requested, extending the crystal Kimiko had provided, including full specifications for both the Severance Protocol and Project Ouroboros. Proceeding with data transfer, Chrono's Null confirmed as the dais beneath Naruto glowed brighter, connecting directly to the communication crystal. Be advised, complete transfer will require approximately 17.3 minutes at current interface capacity. As the transfer began, Naruto's enhanced senses suddenly detected a disturbance in the dimensional barriers surrounding the ruins. A subtle shift in energy patterns that suggested unauthorized entry. Someone or something had penetrated the outer security perimeters and was moving toward his location with deliberate stealth. Chrono's Null, is anyone else authorized to access this facility? He asked quietly, extending his awareness toward the disturbance. The projection processed the query before responding, negative. No AC. TIVE authorization profiles exist beyond emergency protocols. This facility was sealed completely following the Conclave dissolution event. Then we have uninvited guests, Naruto observed, preparing G himself for potential confrontation while ensuring the data transfer continued uninterrupted. How much longer for the transfer? 14 minutes, 7 seconds remaining at current rates. Naruto nodded, making a swift decision. Continue the transfer. I'll investigate the disturbance. He created a shadow clone with a fraction of his transformed energy, enough to maintain the transfer action while keeping his primary consciousness free to handle potential threats. While not as powerful as his true form, the clone possessed sufficient capability to protect the Recordkeeper's sanctum if necessary. Stepping off the dais, Naruto moved toward the chamber's entrance, modulating his energy signature to minimize detection. Whoever had breached the ruins' outer defenses possessed sophisticated dimensional manipulation capabilities. Ordinary intruders would have triggered multiple security systems and been ejected into random dimensional pockets. The disturbance originated from the eastern quadrant of the ruins, where a series of ceremonial chambers connected to the main complex. Moving with supernatural speed, Naruto traversed the intervening space in seconds, his senses extended to maximum sensitivity. What he found was not what he expected. In a small antechamber decorated with faded murals depicting ancient Otsutsuki rituals, a solitary figure knelt before a weathered altar. Dressed in elaborate ceremonial robes of white and pale blue, with cascading black hair that shimmered with embedded crystals, the figure appeared to be performing some kind of ritual, hands mauve in precise patterns as soft chanting filled the air. Most surprising was the nature of the ritual itself. Rather than attempting to breach the sanctum's defenses, the figure appeared to be reinforcing them, adding fresh layers of protective energy to seals that had weakened over millennia. Naruto observed silently for several moments, assessing the situation. The chakra signature was unfamiliar, yet somehow resonant with the ruins themselves, suggesting a connection to their original purpose. More intriguing, the ritualistic techniques being employed incorporated elements he recognized from ancient sealing methods taught by Uzumaki clan traditions, suggesting a potential link to his own ancestral knowledge. Deciding on a direct approach, Naruto allowed his presence to become detectable. though he kept his power subdued to avoid appearing threatening. "Those are celestial boundary seals," he observed quietly. "I haven't seen that technique used in generations." The figure froze mid-motion, then slowly turned to face him. The movement revealed a young woman with striking features, pale skin that seemed to glow with subtle inner light, eyes of such deep blue they appeared almost violet, and ceremonial markings in silver ink tracing delicate patterns across her forehead and cheeks. Rather than showing fear at his sudden appearance, she regarded him with calm assessment, her gaze taking in his transformed appearance with particular attention to the spectral tails flowing behind him. "The 10-tailed one," she stated in a melodic voice that carried unusual harmonic undertones. "The prophecies spoke of your arrival, though not of your specific timing." Naruto raised an eyebrow, unsurprised yet still somewhat weary of being recognized through prophecy. "It happened with increasing frequency across dimensions. You have me at a disadvantage. You know who I am, but I don't know you, or how you managed to enter this sealed facility." The woman rose gracefully to her feet, executing a formal bow that spoke of rigorous ceremonial training. "I am Miyuki Tsukihana, last priestess of the Lunar Covenant and keeper of the Outer Seals. My presence here is both my right and my sacred duty, passed through 27 generations of my lineage." She gestured to the altar where she had been working. "These boundaries must be maintained lest what sleeps beyond awakens prematurely. That has been my family's charge since the sundering of ways." Naruto studied her with newfound interest. Genuine priestesses dedicated to ancient dimensional knowledge were exceedingly rare. Most traditional orders having been disbanded or corrupted over centuries as their original purpose was forgotten. If her claims were accurate, Miyuki represented a living connection to knowledge that might prove invaluable. "The Lunar Covenant," he repeated thoughtfully. "An offshoot of the original Otsutsuki celestial observers, if I remember correctly." Surprise flickered briefly in her violet-blue eyes. "Your knowledge is unexpected. Few remember the true origins of our order." "I've had reason to study dimensional history extensively these past 3 years," Naruto replied. "Though I've never encountered active practitioners of the old ways." Miyuki's gaze grew more focused, studying his transformed features with greater intensity. "You are not as the legends described. They spoke of mindless rage and destruction. Yet you stand before me in full possession of your faculties, speaking of history and dimensional knowledge." "The legends weren't wrong," Naruto acknowledged. "The original 10 Tails was indeed a force of mindless destruction. What I've become is something different, a conscious integration rather than a possessed vessel." The priestess considered this, head tilting slightly in a gesture reminiscent of scholarly assessment. "Fascinating. The prophecies never considered such a possibility." A small, surprisingly warm smile touched her lips. "How wonderfully unpredictable reality proves to be, even after millennia of observation." That unexpected display of personality, scholarly enthusiasm breaking through formal ceremonial bearing, reminded Naruto strongly of Kimiko in her more unguarded moments. Despite the potential security concerns, he found himself instinctively wanting to trust this mysterious priestess. "What brought you to the ruins today specifically?" he asked, maintaining a respectful distance while subtly monitoring the continuing data transfer through his shadow clone's connection. Miyuki's expression grew serious once more. "Dimensional tremors. The boundary layers have been thinning at an alarming rate these past months. Today, my observational instruments detected a concentrated disruption centered on this complex." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Your arrival, I presume." "Partially," Naruto admitted. "Though my presence alone shouldn't cause significant disturbance. I've learned to modulate my dimensional resonance precisely." Then something else triggered my instruments. It wasn't a question but a statement of fact, delivered with quiet certainty. "Something that threatens the boundaries my order is sworn to protect." Naruto made a swift decision. This priestess clearly possessed specialized knowledge that might prove valuable, and her apparent dedication to maintaining dimensional boundaries aligned with his own objectives. "I'm investigating a group calling themselves the Harbingers," he explained. "They're systematically destabilizing dimensional boundaries across multiple realities, apparently implementing something called the Severance Protocol." The effect of those words was immediate and dramatic. Miyuki's composed demeanor shattered, genuine alarm transforming her features as she took an involuntary step backward. "The severing," she whispered, horror evident in her voice. That knowledge was sealed away in the void archives. No one should have access to those techniques. Unfortunately, someone does, Naruto replied grimly, and they're implementing them with considerable expertise. I'm currently downloading technical specifications for a countermeasure called Project Ouroboros. Recognition flashed in Miyuki's eyes. The harmonic stabilizer. That was theoretical even at the height of Otsutsuki technological development. You know of it. The Lunar Covenant preserves knowledge of all major dimensional technologies, though we lack the resources to implement most of them, she explained, composure gradually returning though concern remained evident. Ouroboros was considered the ultimate defensive measure, a system capable of reinforcing dimensional boundaries against any level of attack. She studied him with renewed intensity. But the power requirements were deemed impossible to meet, even for the Conclave's combined resources. Naruto allowed his transformed energy to manifest more visibly, the 10 spectral tails flowing with increased luminosity. My condition provides unique capabilities in that regard. Understanding dawned in Miyuki's expression. Of course, a conscious 10 tails vessel would theoretically possess sufficient energy manipulation capacity. Her analytical assessment shifted suddenly to concern. But the consciousness matrix integration, the mental strain would be enormous. Even with your unique nature, the calculation requirement could overwhelm your neural architecture. That's a risk I'm willing to accept, Naruto stated simply. The alternative is watching countless dimensions collapse while billions suffer. Miyuki guarded him silently for a long moment before nodding once, decisively. Then you will require assistance from those with specialized knowledge of dimensional harmonics. The Covenant's archives contain implementation procedures not included in the official Conclave records. You're offering to help? Naruto asked, somewhat surprised by this development. My order exists to maintain dimensional boundaries and prevent catastrophic bleed-through between realities, she replied with quiet dignity. If the severing has truly been initiated, then all other responsibilities become secondary to preventing multiversal collapse. A soft chime from Naruto's communication device interrupted their conversation. Data transfer complete, came the voice of his shadow clone from the central chamber. Quote, Chronos Null has provided complete specifications as requested. We should return to the Recordkeeper's sanctum, Naruto suggested. I have additional questions about implementation requirements for Ouroboros. Miyuki hesitated, glancing back at the unfinished boundary seals she had been reinforcing. These protections will hold for now, Naruto assured her. And I can help strengthen them before we depart. Still looking somewhat uncertain, the priestess nodded her acceptance. The knowledge in the sanctum takes precedence given current circumstances. Lead the way, 10-tailed one. Naruto, he corrected gently as they began moving through the ancient corridors. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. A small smile touched Miyuki's lips. Names have power in dimensional work, Naruto Uzumaki. Thank you for sharing yours freely. In the Scarlet Dunes dimension, Adira al-Saif knelt before the tribal council of the Scorpion clan, her ember red hair bound in the simple style of a supplicant rather than the elaborate warrior braids she typically wore. Around her neck hung the bone charm of temporary kinship, a ceremonial token Column had bestowed to grant her protected status within clan territory. The council chamber had been carved directly into the red sandstone of the Great Mesa, its dome ceiling embedded with luminescent desert crystals that cast warm amber light across the assembled elders. 13 clan leaders sat in a semicircle, their faces weathered by desert winds and decorated with the ritual scars of their respective lineages. At the center, War Chief Column presided, his scorpion mask now replaced by the headdress of judgment, an elaborate construction of bones, feathers, and precious metals signifying his temporary role as impartial arbiter rather than military commander. Adira al-Saif, exiled princess of Zephyria, he intoned formally, you stand before this council accused of violating the terms of sanctuary by abandoning your people to accompany the divine wanderer. How do you answer? The accusation had been inevitable. Though Column had granted refuge to Adira's followers, political realities demanded formal proceedings to justify such unprecedented cooperation between traditionally hostile factions. Honorable Council, Adira responded, her voice clear and carrying the precise intonation of desert formal speech, I acted not in abandonment but in service. The Divine Wanderer revealed threats to our world that transcend traditional boundaries between North and South, between Zephyria and the Scorpion territories. She raised her head, violet eyes meeting each elder's gaze directly, a gesture that balanced respect with the confidence of royalty. My duty as ruler in exile is to secure my people's future by any means necessary. The knowledge and alliance I gain by accompanying the Wanderer serves that purpose more effectively than remaining physically present. Murmurs spread through the council at her boldness. Few supple icants dared maintain such direct eye contact with tribal elders. An ancient matriarch leaned forward, her face so heavily scarred from desert rituals that it resembled cracked pottery more than human flesh. Pretty words from northern lips, she observed, voice rasping like sand over stone. But our traditions demand blood price for broken oaths. You accepted the Wanderer's protection for your people, then departed when it served your ambition. Adira's expression remained composed despite the deliberate provocation. Respected elder, I accepted no oath binding me to physical presence. I negotiated protection for my people, which Chief Column honorably provides. My service alongside the Wanderer extends that protection by addressing the root cause of our world's afflictions. Another elder, a one-eyed man with ceremonial burn scars covering half his face, spoke next. The northern principalities have always considered themselves above desert law. Why should we believe your actions serve anything but northern interests? Because the threats we face recognize no borders, Adira replied evenly. The dimensional disturbances affect all territories equally. The drought that starved your herds and the political instability that overthrew my family are symptoms of the same disease. She gestured toward the chamber ceiling, where small cracks had appeared in recent months, physical manifestations of the dimensional stress affecting their reality. These fractures appear in Zephyrian palaces and Scorpion dwellings alike. Our world itself is wounded, and healing it requires knowledge from beyond our borders. Column studied her thoughtfully before addressing the council. I have received communication from the Wanderer confirming Princess Adira's claims. The dangers he investigates threaten all clans, all territories. Her assistance in his work directly benefits our people's survival. The ancient matriarch snorted skeptically. You place much faith in a being we barely understand, War Chief. The prophecies are ambiguous regarding the Wanderer's true nature. I place faith in what my eyes have witnessed, Column countered firmly. The Wanderer restored water to NDS that have been barren for generations. He prevented bloodshed between ancient enemies. These are not the actions of a destructive entity. Political currents shifted visibly through the council. Various factions recalculated their positions based on Column's clear support. The chief's influence, while not absolute, carried significant weight in tribal deliberations. After several moments of murmured consultation, the one-eyed elder spoke again. The council acknowledges the unusual nature of these circumstances. Traditional protocols may prove inadequate for unprecedented situations. He fixed Adira with a penetrating gaze. However, allowing a northern royal to represent southern interests in dimensional matters establishes dangerous precedent. What assurance have we that Zephyri and priorities won't supersede clan welfare when critical decisions must be made? It was a fair question, one that cut to the heart of centuries of distrust between their peoples. Adira considered carefully before responding, knowing that standard diplomatic platitudes would ring hollow in this chamber of desert pragmatists. I offer 3 assurances, she finally stated. First, practical real it. Why? My throne remains occupied by usurpers, meaning I currently hold no formal authority to implement Zephyrian policy. Second, observed behavior. I chose exile with my people rather than separate safety when the coup occurred, demonstrating prioritization of collective welfare over personal advantage. She paused, meeting Column's gaze directly. Third, and most binding, I offer blood oath of shared consequence. If my actions alongside the Wanderer bring harm to clan territories, my life is forfeit as compensation. A shocked hush fell over the council chamber. The blood oath was among the most serious commitments in desert culture, a magical binding that linked one's life force directly to the consequences of one's actions. It could not be falsified or circumvented, as the desert itself would extract the promised price regardless of distance or circumstance. Column's expression revealed genuine surprise at her willingness to invoke such a serious covenant. You understand the implications of such an oath. Princess of Zephyria. The desert accepts no excuses, no explanations if harm befalls our people through your actions. I understand perfectly, Adira confirmed steadily. My Roy. Al-Line has always honored its commitments, regardless of cost. The ancient matriarch leaned forward, suddenly interested rather than dismissive. A northerner offering blood oath. Unprecedented. Her cracked lips curved in what might have been respect. You have courage, girl. Or foolishness beyond measure. Often those are merely different perspectives on the same quality, Adira replied with the ghost of a smile. The matriarch barked a harsh laugh. Well answered. Perhaps there is substance beneath northern refinement after all. Column raised a hand, bringing the council's attention back to formal proceedings. The princess has offered blood oath of shared consequence. Does the council accept this as sufficient assurance of good faith? One by one, the tribal elders signified acceptance through traditional gestures, right fist pressed to heart, then opened toward Adira. Only the one-eyed elder hesitated before finally, reluctantly, completing the gesture. The council accepts, Column declared formally. Prepare the ritual elements. From shadowed alcoves, attendants emerged bearing ceremonial implements, a bowl carved from red sandstone, a curved silver knife of ancient design, and a vial containing what appeared to be liquid darkness. Adira remained perfectly still as these items were arranged before her. The blood oath ritual was notorious for its physical and spiritual demands. But she had not offered it lightly. Whatever price it exacted would be worthwhile if it secured her people's protection while she assisted Naruto in addressing the larger dimensional threats. Column descended from his elevated position, removing the headdress of judgment to signify his transition from arbiter to ritual participant. Taking the silver knife, he made a precise incision across his palm, allowing several drops of blood to fall into the sandstone bowl. I, Column, war chief of the Scorpion clan, stand as witness and recipient of this oath, he intoned in the NT ceremonial language of the desert peoples. The blood of my line accepts responsibility for judging faithfully when consequences manifest. He extended the knife to Adira, handle first. She accepted it with appropriate reverence. Then without hesitation drew the blade across her own palm. Her blood, noticeably brighter red than Column's darker crimson, joined his in the bowl. I, Adira al-Saif, Princess of Zephyria, freely offer my life force as guarantee of my commitment to protect both northern and southern interests in my service alongside the divine wanderer, she responded in the same ancient tongue. Her pronunciation flawless despite its being a southern dialect. Should my actions bring harm to the Scorpion clan or its territories, my life is forfeit as recompense. Column took the vial of liquid darkness and added 3 precise drops to the mingled blood. The mixture hissed and began to glow with eldritch blue light, tendrils of energy rising like spectral serpents from the bowl. The desert witnesses, Column declared, the stars record, the winds remember. He dipped his wounded palm into the mixture, then pressed it against Adira's forehead, leaving a glowing imprint. That pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Bound by blood, judged by consequence. So it is done, echoed the council members in unison. Adira felt the oath take effect immediately. Why, a subtle but unmistakable weight settling into her spiritual essence. The desert magic bound her not through external compulsion but through realignment of natural consequences. If her actions while assisting Naruto caused harm to the clan territories, those same actions would reflect equivalent harm back upon her own life force. It was an elegant, impartial system of justice, and one she respected despite its severity. As the ritual concluded, Column helped her to her feet with unexpected gentleness. Few northerners would accept such binding, he observed quietly. Fewer still would understand its true significance. My mother was half desert born, Adira replied softly, this personal detail shared outside the formal proceedings. She taught me to respect southern traditions even while navigating northern politics. Surprise flickered across Column's weathered features. That explains your knowledge of our ceremonial language. Before he could inquire further, a commotion at He Chamber's entrance drew everyone's attention. A scout rushed in, desert travel garb covered in the distinctive red dust of the far western territories. War Chief, the scout called urgently. Riders approaching from the north. They fly the usurper's banner. Column's expression hardened instantly. Numbers. Formation. Full military contingent. at least 200 mounted warriors with support units. They follow the Sacred River approach, 3 hours from our current position at observed speed. The council erupted in concerned discussion. A force that size represented significant commitment from the northern usurper, far beyond standard border patrols or diplomatic missions. Adira's mind raced, calculating implications. They know I'm here, she concluded grimly. Or at least suspect it strongly enough to commit substantial forces. How? Column demanded. We've maintained absolute secrecy regarding your people's presence. There must be informants, Adira replied, tactic. Al assessment overriding diplomatic niceties. Or more likely, dimensional surveillance of some kind. The timing is too convenient, immediately following my departure with the Wanderer, when my ability to coordinate defense is compromised. The one-eyed elder stood abruptly. This proves her complicity. The northerner led enemies to our doorstep. Silence. Column commanded sharply. The blood oath prevents such betrayal. The princess's life force would already be diminishing if she had knowingly endangered our people. He turned to Adira, his expression grave but not accusatory. Could the Say forces have tracked the Wanderer's dimensional signature? Possible, she acknowledged, especially if they possess the advanced technology the Wanderer described. The dimensional disturbances might have left traces they could follow. Quote, the ancient matriarch cackled suddenly, drawing all eyes. How fortunate then that you offered blood oath today, princess. It seems the consequences arrive before the oath's binding has fully settled into your spirit. Despite the matriarch's mocking tone, Adira recognized the statement's significance. Her oath now linked her directly to this situation. Clan's fate and her own were bound together regardless of her physical presence. I need to warn the Wanderer, she stated decisively. This attack's timing suggests coordination with larger dimensional activities. It cannot be coincidence. Column nodded, pragmatic concerns overriding formal protocol. Go. The council's judgment is formally registered. Your oath stands regardless of location. Adira pressed her fist to her heart in the traditional gesture of respect. I will return with assistance if possible. In the meantime, move my people to the deep caverns beneath the western mesa. The natural crystal formations there disrupt tracking technologies. You seem well prepared for defensive measures, princess, observed the one-eyed elder suspiciously. I've spent 3 years anticipating the usurper's eventual pursuit. She replied simply. Preparation isn't conspiracy, elder. It's survival. Without waiting for further discussion, Adira strode from the council chamber, hour 80 calculating what supplies she would need for immediate return to the dimensional sanctuary. The glowing mark on her forehead pulsed with each heartbeat, a constant reminder of her newly formalized responsibility. Behind her, Column began issuing defense orders to his warriors. Whatever forces approached from the north would find the Scorpion clan fully prepared for battle, but Adira's instinct told her this was merely one facet of a much larger, more coordinated attack. The Harbingers had found another connection to Naruto, another pressure point to exploit. And she had no intention of allowing her people to become collateral damage in a multidimensional war. In the sanctuary between dimensions, Kimiko Ishida stood before an array of floating displays, each showing different and analytical perspectives on the mysterious data crystal. Her modified Otsutsuki garments shimmered with active circuitry as she interfaced directly with the sanctuary's systems, her consciousness partial. Lee merged with the ancient technology to enhance processing capacity. 3 days of continuous analysis had yielded remarkable insights into the Harbingers' activities, though crucial questions remained unanswered. The data visualization before her mapped confirmed dimensional disruption events across 23 realities, with projected destabilization patterns extending to potentially hundreds more. Temporal acceleration factors increasing in peripheral dimensions, she murmured, noting how the collapse sequence was proceeding faster than initial models had predicted. They're implementing a modified severance protocol with significantly higher efficiency than theoretical limits suggested possible. A soft chime from the primary communication array interrupted her analysis. Expecting Naruto's scheduled update from the Otsutsuki ruins, she was surprised to see Adira's identification signature instead. Activating the connection, Kimiko was immediately struck by the princess's appearance. Formal desert ceremonial attire partially covered by traveling gear, with a faintly glowing mark on her forehead that pulsed with unusual energy patterns. "Princess Adira," she greeted, immediately noting signs of urgency in the other woman's bearing. "You've completed your council appearance earlier than expected." "Circumstances demanded acceleration," Adira replied tersely. "I require immediate extraction. The Northern Usurper has dispatched military forces against the Scorpion clan, 200 warriors at minimum, arriving within 3 hours." Kimiko processed this information swiftly, already activating the Sanctuary's dimensional transition protocols. "Targeting your current coordinates. Prepare for transition in 30 seconds. As the Sanctuary's systems established a stable connection to the Scarlet Dunes dimension, Kimiko's analytical mind immediately connected this development to broader patterns. The timing suggests coordination with Harbinger activities in other dimensions. This appears to be another targeted strike against Naruto's connections. "My assessment exactly," Adira confirmed, her image flickering slightly as she gathered essential supplies while maintaining communication. The usurper never committed forces this substantial to southern territories before. Something has changed in their strategic calculus. The transition portal stabilized, creating a shimmering doorway between dimensions directly in front of Adira's position. The princess stepped through without hesitation, the portal closing instantly behind her as Kimiko implemented standard security protocols. In person, the ceremonial mark on Adira's forehead was even more distinctive, a complex tribal pattern glowing with deep blue energy that pulsed in perfect synchronization with her heartbeat. Blood oath of shared consequence, Kimiko identified immediately, her extensive research into multidimensional cultural practices allowing instant recognition. "You've bound ourself to clan welfare through desert magic. That's significant." Adira raised an eyebrow, impressed despite herself at the scientist's knowledge of obscure desert traditions. "It was necessary to secure my people's protection while I assist here. The oath ensures my actions remain aligned with their welfare." She glanced around the sanctuary's main chamber. "Where is Naruto? He needs to be informed immediately." "Still at the Otsutsuki ruins," Kimiko replied, already establishing a priority communication channel. "He's discovered crucial information about the Harbingers, technology and a potential countermeasure." The primary viewport activated, displaying Naruto's location in the ancient recordkeeper's sanctum. He appeared to be in deep conversation with a woman in ceremonial robes whom Kimiko didn't recognize. Both turned toward the communication portal as it stabilized. "Kimiko," Naruto acknowledged, immediately noting her expression. "What's happened?" "Coordinated attack in the Scarlet Dunes dimension," she reported efficiently. "Military forces from the northern territories moving against the Scorpion clan. Princess Adira has returned to the sanctuary and believes the timing indicates Harbinger involvement." Naruto's expression hardened as Adira stepped into view of the communication portal. His eyes immediately focused on the glowing mark on her forehead, understanding its significance from his experiences with similar binding magics. "You took blood oath," he observed, concern evident beneath his composed exterior. "A necessary commitment," Adira replied without regret. "But more importantly, the usurper's forces moved immediately following my departure, as if they were waiting for me to leave my people vulnerable." Systematic targeting of connections, Naruto concluded grimly. Just as the messenger warned. The Harbingers are striking at multiple points simultaneously. He turned slightly, gesturing to the robed woman beside him. "Miyuki Tsukihana, last priestess of the Lunar Covenant. She's been maintaining the dimensional seals in these ruins for years and possesses specialized knowledge of Otsutsuki technologies." The priestess bowed, formally toward the communication portal. "Honored to make your acquaintance, even under such circumstances." Kimiko returned the bow with equal formality, scholarly interest momentarily overriding crisis management. "A surviving member of the Lunar Covenant. Fascinating. Your order's understanding of dimensional harmonics would be invaluable to our current research." "Focus, please," Adira interjected with practical impatience. "My people face imminent attack, potentially as part of a coordinated Harbinger operation." "What's our response?" Naruto's expression shifted to tactical assessment. "We need to determine if this is indeed Harbinger-directed or merely opportunistic action by your dimension's usurper. Kimiko, can you scan the Scarlet Dunes dimension for dimensional technology signatures?" "Already initiated," she confirmed, gesturing to secondary displays where analytical processes were running. Preliminary results show unusual energy patterns around the northern military forces, consistent with dimensional monitoring technology but not fully matching known harbinger signatures. Allies, then, Naruto concluded. Not direct harbingers but groups they're influencing or supporting with limited technology transfer. That aligns with patterns we've observed in other dimensions, Kimiko agreed. The harbingers appear to be recruiting or manipulating local power structures rather than operating entirely independently. From the communication portal, Miyuki spoke up, her melodic voice carrying unusual authority despite its softness. This represents classic Otsutsuki infiltration methodology. Rather than direct conquest, they identified and influenced existing power structures to create societal conditions favorable to their objectives. All eyes turned to the priestess, whose academic knowledge suddenly took on immediate practical relevance. The usurper who overthrew your family, Miyuki continued, addressing Adira directly. Did his rise to power include the unexplained technological advances or sudden shifts in previously stable alliances? Adira's violet eyes widened slightly as connections formed. Both. General Varkos was a traditionalist with minimal interest in innovation before his coup. Afterward, his forces deployed weapons unlike anything previously seen in Zephyria. And 7 loyal provincial governors simultaneously betrayed their oaths, behavior without precedent in our political history. Classic signs of external manipulation, Miyuki confirmed. The harbingers likely identified your dimension as strategically valuable due to IT's unique position in the dimensional lattice, then engineered political conditions that would facilitate their larger objectives. Naruto turned to the holographic presence of Chronos Null, who had remained silent during this exchange. Can you confirm the strategic value of the Scarlet Dunes dimension within the larger dimensional framework? The ancient consciousness imprint processed this query. Surrounding pillars pulsing with calculation activity. Dimension designation South Dakota 217 occupies junction position along 3 primary dimensional current flows. Control of this position would provide a significant tactical advantage for large-scale dimensional engineering projects. Like the Severance Protocol, Naruto concluded grimly. Precisely, Chronos Null confirmed. Historical records indicate that dimension was specifically designated as a monitoring point during the final convergence war due to its unique harmonic properties. Adira processed this information with remarkable composure, considering it effectively confirmed that her entire world's political upheaval had been engineered by interdimensional entities for strategic purposes. So my family was overthrown not for internal political reasons, but because we represented stability that would interfere with these harbingers' plans, she stated, voice carefully controlled despite the profound implications. 3 years of exile, hundreds of loyal supporters executed, my entire civilization destabilized, all as a side effect of their dimensional engineering project. I'm sorry, Naruto offered, genuine compassion, evident despite the clinical nature of their tactical discussion. Finding out your world's suffering was engineered for external purposes doesn't make it any less real or painful. The princess straightened her shoulders. Personal emotions visibly set aside in favor of practical response. It changes nothing about immediate necessities. My people still need protection, whether their danger comes from local politics or interdimensional manipulation. Agreed, Naruto replied, and defending them now takes on strategic importance beyond humanitarian concerns. If the harbingers value your dimension for its junction position, preventing them from establishing complete control there becomes crucial to our larger counter-strategy. He turned back to Kimiko. We need a 3-part response. First, immediate defensive support for the Scorpion clan to repel the northern attack. Second, accelerated analysis of the Ouroboros specifications of acquired. Third, establishment of a permanent monitoring presence in the Scarlet Dunes dimension to track harbinger activities there. Kimiko nodded briskly, already implementing the necessary protocols. I can modify existing sensor technology to create remote monitoring arrays calibrated specifically to detect harbinger energy signatures. Princess Adira's knowledge of local geography would help identify optimal placement locations. The Lunar Covenant maintains established concealment techniques that would prevent detection of such arrays, Miyuki offered. I can provide the necessary modifications if Dr. Ishida will share her design specifications. Adira's expression remained focused on immediate practicalities. The defensive support needs to arrive within 2 hours to be effective. The Scorpion warriors are skilled but significantly outnumbered by northern forces. Naruto considered their options carefully. His direct intervention in the Scarlet Dunes would provide overwhelming force, but might further destabilize the dimension's already compromised boundaries. Additionally, such obvious display of power could accelerate Harbinger timelines if they were monitoring the situation. We need subtle intervention, he decided. Something that assists the Scorpion clan without revealing our full capabilities or my direct involvement. The sanctuary contains various defensive technologies that could be deployed without revealing their interdimensional origin, Kimiko suggested. Modified to resemble local technological capabilities, they would provide tactical advantage without exposing our larger strategy. ICAN deliver such technology and coordinate its deployment, Adira stated firmly. My military training included integration of new capabilities under battlefield conditions. The blood oath mark on her forehead pulsed more vividly, responding to her commitment to protect her people. The desert magic bound within it seemed to approve of her proposed course of action. There's another factor to consider, Miyuki interjected thoughtfully. If the Harbingers are indeed monitoring that dimension closely, any technology we introduce might be studied and potentially countered in future confrontations. We should consider introducing capabilities we're willing to reveal at this stage. Naruto nodded appreciatively at the priestess's strategic thinking. Excellent point. We'll provide defensive than offensive technologies, barrier projectors, sensor jammers, and healing implements. Nothing that reveals our understanding of dimensional manipulation directly. I can have appropriate equipment prepared within 30 minutes. Kimiko confirmed, already moving toward the sanctuary's technology repositories. Adira turned to follow her, but paused as Naruto addressed her specifically through the communication portal. Princess Adira, he said, his transformed eyes studying her with unusual intensity. The blood oath you've taken connects you directly to your dimension's welfare. That connection might prove valuable beyond its intended purpose. She raised an eyebrow questioningly. How so? Dimensional magic of that nature creates harmonic resonances that transcend conventional boundaries, he explained. With your permission, Kimiko can modify the monitoring equipment to use that connection as an additional security parameter, making it virtually impossible for anyone but you to disable or manipulate the systems once deployed. Adira considered this for only a moment before nodding decisively. If my oath can provide additional protection, I authorize whatever modifications are necessary. As she departed with Kimiko to prepare the defensive equipment, Naruto turned his attention back to Miyuki and Chrono's Null in the Recordkeeper's sanctum. We need to accelerate our timeline, he stated. All traces of earlier uncertainty gone from his bearing. The Harbingers' coordinated strikes suggest they're moving toward implementation of their final strategy faster than we anticipated. Miyuki nodded in agreement. The Ouroboros specifications you've acquired will require significant adaptation to current conditions. The original design parameters assumed implementation by a full Otsutsuki technical division with access to specialized materials and energy sources. Which we lack, Naruto acknowledged. But we have alternatives they didn't, namely, my unique energy configuration and Kimiko's innovations in dimensional physics. Chrono's Null's holographic form shifted slightly, indicating access to deeper archive levels. Modified implementation protocols exist within restricted archives, originally developed as contingency measures for limited resource scenarios during the final Convergence War. Access those protocols, Naruto requested. We'll need to adapt them further based on current capabilities, but they provide a starting framework. As the ancient consciousness imprint complied, extracting the requested information from secured archives. Miyuki studied Naruto with scholarly assessment. You've built something remarkable, she observed quietly. In just 3 years, you've established interdimensional monitoring, developed new technologies, formed alliances across realities, and now stand as the primary counter to a threat the original Otsutsuki conclave itself considered apocalyptic. A small, self-deprecating smile crossed Naruto's transformed features. Mostly I've stumbled from one crisis to another, trying to understand what I've become while preventing things from falling apart around me. That modesty does you credit, Miyuki replied, but undervalues your accomplishments. Few beings could have maintained their core identity through the transformation you experienced, let alone utilized that power constructively. Before Naruto could respond, Chrono's null announced completion of the archive extraction. Contingency implementation protocols accessed. Warning. These methodologies were never field-tested due to conclusion of hostilities. Theoretical success probability calculated at 64.37% under optimal conditions. We'll improve those odds, Naruto stated confidently. Transfer the complete specifications to my communication device. Miyuki and I will return to the sanctuary immediately to begin adaptation work. As the data transfer initiated, Miyuki performed a brief ritual gesture toward the ancient chamber. Murmuring words in a language that seemed to shift between audible sound and pure conceptual meaning. A blessing of preservation, she explained, noting Naruto's curious expression. To maintain the sanctum's integrity until my return. You intend to come back here? He asked, somewhat surprised given the urgency of their current situation. My duty to maintain these seals remains. Regardless of new responsibilities, she replied simply. Some commitments transcend immediate circumstances. Naruto nodded in understanding, respecting her dedication to long-established purposes even as she adapted to unprecedented developments. Ready for transition? He asked as the data transfer completed. Miyuki gathered her ceremonial robes with practiced dignity. Lead the way, ten-tailed one. Naruto. He corrected again, with gentle humor. Naruto, she acknowledged, a small smile warming her serene features. With a gesture that had become second nature after 3 years of dimensional travel, Naruto created a transition portal directly to the sanctuary. Unlike conventional methods that required complex calculations and enormous energy expenditure, his transformed Chure allowed him to simply fold space between points, creating temporary bridges across realities. As they prepared to step through, Chrono's null's holographic form addressed them one final time, PR. Obability analysis indicates rapidly diminishing temporal window for effective countermeasure implementation. Based on observed harbinger activity patterns, critical threshold for irreversible demency. Onal collapse will be reached in approximately 17.3 standard cycles. Just over 2 weeks, Naruto translated grimly. Then we'll need to work quickly. With that, he and Miyuki stepped through the portal, leaving the ancient recordkeeper's sanctum to its eternal vigil among the dimensional currents. In dimensions across the multiverse, leaders gathered in secure chambers to discuss unprecedented developments affecting their respective realities. Some meetings occurred in gleaming technological facilities, others in ancient temples or hidden bunkers, but all shared a common focus, the being known variously as the Divine Wanderer, the Ten-Tailed One, or by his original name, Naruto Uzumaki. In the crystalline dominion, a council of 12 archons convened beneath the dome of living sea. Crystal that shifted colors with their emotions. Their bodies, partially merged with the crystal technology that sustained their civilization, glimmered with internal light as they communicated through both words and direct neural linkage. The Wanderer's activities have increased 73% in the past standard cycle, reported the Prime Archon, her crystalline form pulsing with deep blue concern. Boundary monitors detect his energy signature across multiple junction points, often preceding or following dimensional tremors. Causation or response? Questioned another Archon, their form vibrating with analytical orange. Unclear, admitted the Prime. Our observation capabilities remain limited by interference patterns of unknown origin. However, the correlation between his appearances and subsequent stabilization of affected areas suggests responsive rather than causative relationship. A third Archon, their crystal structure shot through with suspicious red, interrupted. We have only his actions to judge, not intentions. A being of such power moving freely between dimensions represents unprecedented security concerns regardless of apparent benevolence. Yet the alternative seems worse, countered another. Glowing peaceful green. Dimensional stability has improved 26% in regions where his intervention has been confirmed. The protection he provided during the Void incursion saved millions of our citizens. The Prime Archon raised a crystalline hand, silencing further debate. The Covenant of Realms approaches its centennial gathering. I propose formal discussion of He Wanderer's status across affiliated dimensions. United policy would serve us better than fragmented response. Agreement resonated through the crystal network, though undertones of discord remain. D. Evident in subtle color variations throughout the chamber. In the techno-organic collective, a different type of gathering occurred. Beings of merged biological and mechanical composition link. Ed directly to a central processing matrix, their individuated consciousnesses temporarily subsumed into collective analysis. Dimensional anomaly designation. Naruto continues to defy predictive modeling. Stated the consensus voice, the temporarily elected spokesperson for the collective mind. Behavioral patterns show 89.7% consistency with benevolent classification, yet power metrics exceed safety parameters by orders of magnitude. Quote, clarification required, responded a sub-voice from within the collective. Does anomaly represent greater existential threat than ongoing dimensional deterioration? Data streams flowed through the linked consciousness as the collective processed vast analytical datasets, historical precedents, and probability projections simultaneously. Negative, the consensus voice finally determined. Current evidence suggests anomaly. Naruto represents potential counterbalance to dimensional degradation. However, concentration of such power in single entity creates unacceptable vulnerability to corruption or control. Proposal. Continued observation with contingency measures maintained at ready status, suggested another sub-voice. Intervention only, if behavior deviates from established benevolent patterns. The collective consciousness rippled with evaluative processes before achieving 73.4% agreement threshold, sufficient for tentative policy MP lamentation but below the 85% required for committed action. Consensus achieved. Monitored non-interference with escalation triggers defined, declared the consensus voice. Additional proposal. Direct resource support through accessible dimensional junction points to facilitate stabilization efforts without direct contact. This secondary proposal achieved 91.2% agreement, indicating strong collective confidence in supportive rather than confrontational approach. In less advanced dimensions, leaders relied on more traditional methods of assessment and response. The High Council of Azimuth gathered in their mountainside sanctuary, 12 hooded figures seated around a circular table carved from a single massive tree that had witnessed 17 centuries of political deliberation. The signs are unmistakable, intoned the Archmage, ancient fingers tracing prophetic texts illuminated by floating mage lights. The Star Walker moves between worlds, leaving change in his wake. The seventh seal text specifically warned of such a being preceding the Great Unmaking. Yet other passages suggest a protector rather than destroyer, countered the chief diplomat, her practic. Mindset tempering mystical interpretations with historical context. The Codex of Realms describes one who walks between stars, bearing the burden of 10 divine aspects as the shield against encroaching void. The defense minister, a scarred veteran of dimensional border skirmishes, pounded the table for emphasis. Prophecies can be interpreted endlessly. What matters are observable facts. Of our border outposts report dimensional stabilization following anomalous energy readings matching this being's signature. Whatever else he may be, his actions have benefited our realm thus far. A cunning predator first gains trust, warned the spymaster, face concealed entirely by shadow-woven fabric. We have reports from 17 sources describing a sanctuary between dimensions WHER. This being gathers followers from various realities. What purpose such collection serves remains unknown. The council elder, oldest among them at 163 years, raised a gnarled hand for attention. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of experience that transcended individual perspective. We face unprecedented circumstances requiring balanced response, she stated simply. I propose 3-tiered approach. Continued monitoring through conventional means, scholarly research into historical precedents across allied dimensions, and preparation of both diplomatic and defensive resources should direct contact occur. Murmurs of agreement spread around the table, the practical compromise satisfying both cautious and progressive factions. And what of the Dimensio? Null tremors affecting our eastern provinces? Asked the resource minister. They grow stronger each month. If this wanderer truly possesses power to stabilize such disturbances, should we not seek his assistance directly? Uncomfortable silence followed this suggestion. Actively seeking contact with an interdimensional entity of unknown motivations represented a paradigm shift in their traditionally isolationist policies. Finally, The council elder spoke again. Desperation breeds foolishness. We will strengthen our own dimensional barriers through conventional means while gathering more information. If conditions deteriorate beyond our management capability, then, and only then, will we consider direct outreach. Though not entirely satisfied, the council accepted this moderate approach. Unspoken but understood by all was the reality that their options were limited when facing threats that transcended conventional understanding. Across these dimensions and dozens more, similar deliberations occurred as leaders struggled to formulate appropriate responses to both the increasing dimensional instability and the mysterious wanderer who appeared connected to these developments. Some maintained aggressive monitoring, others prepared defensive measures, while a few initiated tentative diplomatic overtures through various intermediaries. What none yet realized was that these isolated discussions represented precisely the fragmented response the Harbingers had counted on. By keeping dimensional leaders focused on the mysterious wanderer rather than the underlying cause of the disturbances, they created perfect conditions for their larger strategy to advance undetected. In their hidden operational base, a pocket dimension existing partially outside conventional reality, Harbinger leadership observed these political developments with satisfaction. Phase 3 proceeds as calculated, reported the analysis director, her silver-white hair and pale features bearing the distinctive Otsutsuki lineage markers, though modified with technological enhancements that pulsed beneath translucent skin. Dimensional leadership remains divided on appropriate response to the Ten Tails vessel. Approximately 63% maintain cautious observation protocols rather than active intervention or alliance formation. The Harbinger commander, a figure whose appearance blended Otsutsuki heritage with extensive technological modification until he appeared more machine than organic being, nodded in satisfaction. Only his eyes remained fully biological, cold black orbs that reflected no light. Their caution serves our purpose, he noted, voice carrying harmonic distortions that suggested partially synthetic vocal production. By the time unified response becomes possible, critical threshold will be achieved. He turned toward a massive dimensional viewport displaying real-time visualization of the multiverse's structural framework, an impossibly complex lattice of interconnect realities with pulsing nodes representing junction points and flowing currents of dimensional energy connecting them. Throughout this display, red indicators marked locations where Severance Protocol implementation had already begun. Their pattern forming a precise geometric configuration when viewed from 5-dimensional perspective. The Ten Tails vessel has acquired Ouroboros specifications, noted another Harbinger. This one bearing more pronounced feminine characteristics despite similar technological modifications. Monitoring confirms access to the Recordkeeper's sanctum approximately 7.3 hours ago. The commander displayed no concern at this development. Expected and accounted for. Ouroboros implementation requires resources he cannot acquire within remaining timeframe. The design parameters provided false optimism while revealing his current capabilities and approach methodology. The attack on his connections proceeds as scheduled, confirmed the operations director. 17 dimensions now experiencing targeted pressure against individuals, organizations and locations demonstrating affiliation patterns. Resource expenditure remains within acceptable parameters. The commander studied the dimensional display thoughtfully, focusing on a particular junction point that pulsed with unusual energy patterns. Accelerate timeline convergence. The vessel's Akisi, Chion of Ouroboros specifications justifies compression of remaining phases. Initiate final severance preparations immediately. Momentary silence met this command as the implications registered among the leadership council. Acceleration meant abandoning certain security protocols, accepting higher operational visibility in exchange for earlier completion. Resource Director, the commander continued, turning toward a Harbinger whose technological modifications appeared primarily internal, giving him a more conventional appearance save for eyes of solid silver. Authorize release of Tier 1 dimensional technologies to all primary operational groups. Containment concerns are now secondary to implementation timelines. Understood, Commander, the Resource Director acknowledged. Full deployment packages will be distributed within 6 standard hours. Warning: this will significantly increase detection probability across monitored dimensions. Acceptable risk profile, the commander declared. By the time Unified Response mobilizes, the critical threshold will be achieved. Preparations for dimensional restructuring must be prioritized above all containment protocols. As the lead, our ship council dispersed to implement these new directives. The commander remained before the dimensional display, studying one particular node with focused attention, the unique energy signature that R.E. presented Naruto Uzumaki's interdimensional sanctuary. Your existence was unexpected, he murmured, addressing the absent Ten Tails vessel as if conducting a private conversation. A random variable, that initial calculations failed to predict. Yet even apparent chaos ultimately serves the greater pattern. His modified fingers traced the connection points surrounding the sanctuary, mapping potential approach vectors and structural vulnerabilities with cold precision. Everything you build, every alliance you form, every dimension you stabilize, all serve to clarify the final configuration, he continued softly. The multiverse will be reconstructed according to optimal parameters, with or without your cooperation. Your efforts merely refine our approach. With a gesture that seemed almost respectful, the commander activated a specialized dimensional scanner that penetrated deeper into the structural framework, revealing currents and patterns invisible to conventional observation. The irony remains perfect, he concluded with the closest approximation of satisfaction his modified emotional architecture could produce. In attempting to prevent the convergence, you provide exactly the catalyst required for its completion. Chapter 3 End. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.